Hello, everybody, and welcome to the pull list for comics that were out on July 16th, 2025. I am your host, Krisis, coming to you live from New Zealand, so you don't have to adjust your streaming screens, though you could, because you are having a crisis. And as we know, we start off the show every single week, or maybe you don't know if it's your first time watching, but we start out with my top comic series of 2025 so far. I'm completely read up on everything that has come out between January 1st and July 16th, and this is what I think the best comics are, according to me. Here we go. At number 20, we still have Doom Academy, recently concluded. Number 19, sinking a bit, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with Jason Aaron, only 2 more issues left in his run. At 18, The Avengers by Jed McKay and a variety of artists. Number 17, Conan the Barbarian from Titan Comics, written by Jim Zub with a variety of artists, a spectacular comic book. 16, Absolute Superman, Jason Aaron does Hope Corps with absolutely wonderful letters, or not letters. Letters are great though, by Becca Carey. Colors by Ulysses Ariola. Number 15, Moon Knight by Jed McKay. Number 14, Detective Comics, sinking a little bit on the writings from Tom Taylor with Lee Garbett and Mikkel Janin on art. Number 13, we have James Tynion's Wind, The Power of Blood, concluding next month. Number 12, new on the top 20, because we hit a number 3 issue this week, Los Monstros from James Robinson and Jesus Marino. Number 11, The Amazing Spider-Man, written by Joe Kelly. Now we're into the top 10. Some movement here. Mouse Guard, Dawn of the Black Axe went up. Number 9, Ghost Box by Mike Carey, which, by the way, the collected edition is in this month's DCBS catalog, and pre-orders is moving up. Oh my gosh, I'm out of time already. 8, Star Wars Jedi Knights by Mark Guggenheim. Number 7, Jump Scare by Cullen Bunn and Danny Lucker. Number 6, Doctor Strange of Asgard, recently concluded by Derek Landy. Number 5, FML by Telly Sue DeConnick. Number 4, Out of Alcatraz by Christopher Cantwell. Number 3, Solomon Kane. And number 2, we're taking out everyone down with us by Matt Rosenberg, because at number 1 now we have Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Waters. Art by Hayden Sherman, colors from Fiona Farrell, and letters from Frank Sedvit. Saying all the numbers makes it go slower. I have to account for that. I got to get through 20 books, and I got to say the numbers 1 through 20. That's a lot of things to say. So you might have noticed some familiar books have dropped out of the top 10 and the top 20, and that's why everything moved up, and we will talk about that a little bit more this week. But wait, we're not done with the stuff that is, oh wait, we're not ready for that yet. There's new features today, folks. But first, we're going to talk about my picks of the week. So when I write about all of these books for crushingcrisis.com, I try to guess what my top book of the week will be, and then we see what is really the case. So I thought this week from DC, my top book would be Batman and Robin Year One by Mark Wade and Chris Samney. That was not actually the case, although that was an okay issue. This is a weird week, I'm telling you now. My favorite DC book of the week was a book that I hated the first issue of. It is Batman and Robin, or actually Robin and Batman, Jason Todd from Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. We will talk about that more later. At Marvel, I thought my pick of the week would be Imperial, because they're, it's interesting. It's Hickman. My pick of the week, actually, another book I largely have disliked up until this point, to try to give you an idea of how upside down this week has been, was The New Champions by Steve Fox. My image pick of the week was Blood and Thunder, a book I've loved the first 2 issues of. I expected it to be in my top 20. Now that it has hit issue 3, it is not. My favorite image issue this week was a brand new series, Ghost Pepper by Ludo Lalabi. An indie book of the week I thought would be Benjamin. I loved the first issue last month. Nope, it was Los Monstros. Not totally shocking. And that is why it is in my top 20. So for those of you who did not see my message before the stream started, I have never hated a week of comic books as much as I hated the comic books from July 16th. I think there's been 5 other weeks that have ever been this low in the history of me looking into these things and tracking these things, which started at the beginning of 2017. So this was not a good one for me. And so there are many surprises, both positive and negative. That's the nicest way I can say it. So here's a new feature I thought I'd bring just so I can have a little bit of fun today. Here is a stacked graph of the distribution of the publishers that I've been reading this year. Red at the bottom is Marvel. Marvel has a huge amount of market share. I read almost every Marvel book. I've only dropped a few this year. Uncanny X-Men, Ultimate X-Men, Black Panther, which I actually just picked back up, Incredible Hulk, and then I don't read some of the what-if-y type one-shots. There are some weeks that there are more than 50% of the books on the digital market are Marvel books. The next one up is DC. That is the blue. So DC varies, and they do not have as much market share as Marvel. And I do read just about every DC book except for some Black Label. And then we have purple, which is Image. I read every Image #1, but not every Image book. So Image can fluctuate. And that top filling down is all books outside of the big three. So you see at the beginning of the year, I was reading many more books outside of the big three because I was sampling and trying to figure out what I liked. And that has decreased as the year has gone by because I figured it out. But this, to me, is the one that is very, very interesting. And I know it's quite small for you. I'll try to find better ways to show in the future. But this is those same 4 things shown as my average 6-month rating. So I think a rating week to week kind of jumps up, it goes down, it jumps up, it goes down. But if you get a running average over 6 months, you can see the trend. So at the top there, we see the dark blue line is DC. I've always liked DC the best for the past year. It's been trickling down. There's been weaker books at DC, but DC still, if we go all the way to the present, has a solid lead over everybody else. Then the green, which is that non-big three, again, liking it at the the year, but it's way, way better than everything else. The bright pink is the average. Then way below the average, we have Marvel and Image pretty much neck and neck at that very low point and trending somewhat down. And then the dotted, very thin line that goes up and down is the actual weekly average. And I wanted to show this because you can see my weekly average. It's usually between 2.5 and 3 in terms of ratings. There's some weeks that get a little bit above 3. There's some weeks that get a little bit below 2.5, but generally it's in there. Here's this week's rating. Notice that the lowest 2 points it has ever been to previously were like 2.4. And notice it often recently I've been saying, this is my best week all this year. It happened a few times, right? 3, 3.8, right? Here's my average rating this week. So I just wanted to bring the data this week to preface that this is not going to be a happy show. This is going to be an oops, all rants edition of the pull list. Hello, it's been 6 minutes already. That's just the day I'm having. I'm going to say hi to some of you in the comments, and then we're going to try to think of a moment of crisis. I don't know. And I got to put on my glasses, which means we're also going to get the face reveal. I did a very subtle face today, I thought. And then I saw how much blush went onto my cheeks. And so that's the face that we got to work with. Okay. Cruel Angel, hello to you. Adrian Montana saying that they will be back to watch on the replay. Super Chop here, one of our most regulars. Hank will be watching on the replay. Cedric and Alan don't have anything to do tomorrow, so they're going to stay up late and watch tonight. We have Pasta Jensen talking about that Blood and Thunder. I will be talking about that a little bit later. Yana Paul saying hello, as is Helen. Always good to see you here, Helen. Jamie C47. Oh, did we already say this? No, we didn't say hi to Jamie C47 already. Sorry, didn't like this week. Well, we'll see. Hope the reads weren't draining for you. It was hard. I thought I was going to actually do this as a catch-up last Thursday, and it just took forever to finish them because it was killing me. Let's see. Edwin Billiot is here. Jean-Remy Argueta is here. Hype for the stream. Considering how I said on my post how much I hated it. One Wheelchair X says here, I tried to tag you in the post I did, and YouTube just won't tag you. It tagged every other human being I've ever had a thought about, but it will not tag you. But One Wheelchair X, of course, does great X-Men stuff. If you missed when I used to just talk about X-Men all the time, you probably want to be subscribed to his channel. Quinn Cognito is here. I was just talking about last night with talking about Maker Comics for Kids, which is a line of graphic novels I really like. Rex Mo is here. Hello to you. Samantha Jane, Kiora to you. Watching my top 60 on your 10K run up to number 24. I'll be talking about my running and other athletics today because I'm definitely in the middle of quite a push for that. Prima is here. Sorry. Oh, you're not late because I was late. Logan Wayne saying hello. Patrick Borgeld saying, I didn't expect this on a Monday. Well, me neither, but sometimes life just happens, my friend. Now finish FF by North, which I love all of except for the last arc. Catching up with Amazing Spider-Man by Spencer, and hopefully starting Wells soon. And you will get to test my theory that Wells is better as a binge. John Remy, shocked that Lemire was my pick of the week. I'm telling you, it was a crazy week. Michael Weslius is here. Ahmed Russell, hello. Have we ever said hello to Ahmed Russell before? Maybe only once or twice. I do not remember that name emerging from these glossy lips. Richard Bradley, surprise statistics. Trust me, if I could just do an all statistics stream and get away with not talking about comics at all this week, I would do it. Kyle saying hello, keeping me company on your drive home. I'm very happy to. Okay. I think I said hello to all the unique human beings. So if you're new to this show, the thing we do next is a moment of crisis. And if you're usually here for this show, I didn't think of anything yet. But moment of crisis is where I just pick a topic, and sometimes it has to do with comics, and sometimes it doesn't. And then I just expound on it until I can't expound anymore. So today, if you've been watching from the beginning of this year, I have this saying, this motto we've coined, which is resolve, repair, recover, which is first you've got to decide to do the thing. Then you've got to make the changes, make that change. change. Then you've got to actually take some time and recover through those changes so you're ready to reattack. And that is something that's really served me well. In past weeks, I might have just totally skipped this because I missed it on a Sunday, but I was like, you know what? Do the things that needed to be done yesterday, get all the comic books and the ratings and the things in order, make all your notes, and then show up tomorrow and do it. It's fine. So it served me well. But I want to talk about something that to me is a corollary to that. And I'm going to try to make it relate to comic books, which is the idea of the sunk cost fallacy. Are you all familiar with the sunk cost fallacy? The idea of the sunk cost fallacy is sort of, we've spent so much, and it doesn't have to be money, time, money, anything that you treasure, anything that's valuable to you. We've put so much into this already that we should probably keep doing it, or we should probably finish it. It's not just for things with a finish line, right? And I think we as comic book readers and as collectors and as people who like these massive universes of things, I think we often fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy, but I think comic book companies do too. And the thing that I'll actually use an example is a real life thing, which is running. As we all know, I hate running. There's nothing I hate more. When I'm running, I am thinking the whole time, nothing on the earth could be as bad as this. I know there's things worse happening in the world right now. For me personally, in that moment, compared to the couch I could be sitting on, running is the worst thing. And a few months ago, I was on a run and I started to feel this twinge, and then it turned into a little bit of a hurt, and then it turned into a pain. And then by the end of the run, I was like near tears in pain. But I was in the middle of a run and I was of the mindset, we've got to finish it. We've got to finish each course that you're on. I got to get the time. And that was a sunk cost fallacy. For the amount of injury I was feeling, I probably should have stopped when I really started feeling the injury and just walked it out or called an Uber or something, right? And based on that injury, I've been having a lot of trouble running. And I tried to go on after months of working through it, stretching. You've heard me, I've been swimming, I've been doing yoga. Last week, I started doing heavy running again. And sure enough, I felt that twinge. And this time I was saying, what? We're we resolve, repair, recover. I'm plugged into the physical internet and then the plug stopped working, but the Wi-Fi still works. Who knows? I may just be a blur on your screen right now, but it seems like I'm broadcasting, so I'm going to keep talking. So what I was saying is that, on the second run that happened last week, I kind of got to that point in the run where it seems like things were going, maybe we should just walk it out to the end. And because of that, I was not in pain. I was not crying. I just felt a twinge. And now I can go into my resolve, repair, recover. I'm going to go see a physiotherapist. I'm going to do all the things because this time we're going to fix it, right? That's really, I didn't do the full repair step the first time around. And I bring this up because I think we get stuck in that sunk cost a lot of times and we want to finish things out no matter the pain. I think that's true in our collections, right? We start buying a certain line of omnibuses. You see somebody on Reddit and they're like, well, I've committed to buy all of the Batman omnibuses, so I'm buying all of Batman. And you're like, you might not want to follow through with that. Have you read all of them? Do you like them? Are you sure? Because that might not be for you. But they're like, well, I've already put there. I just lessened the resolution a little bit. Hopefully that will help. You often see people with that with their collection in general. I've got to collect all the Masterworks. I've got to keep buying all of Marvel every week. And I know I'm one to talk because I'm reading all of Marvel, but I used to be that person who was buying every single Marvel trade every week. And that's what the equation I ran in the end of 2015. And I thought, I've put so much into this and I love having a complete collection of this. But if I look at the time and money this is going to cost me for another year, another 5 years, now we're 10 years after I made that decision, I would be out thousands of dollars and it would fill up this whole room. And for what? I'm not in any rush to reread any of those runs, right? And so I also think that that's a thing for comic book companies. And we criticize comic book companies in both directions when they're having problems with the sunk cost fallacy, because we criticize some companies like Marvel when they have Daredevil by Saladin Ahmed, which is up to 25 issues, and we're like, you should have canceled already. It shouldn't even be happening. You should have already known that it was bad, right? And we say that about like the From the Ashes book, like this direction sucks. But then when Marvel actually pays attention to the sunk cost fallacy and they're like, well, we're only going to noise if it's not paying dividends, right? And then we go, they're canceling everything at 10. So there's no true way to win with us. We don't like it when people keep sinking in cost, and we don't like it when they cut their losses too early. But I think that the key is sunk cost fallacy does not exist on its own, right? So I ended that run early last week. I'm happy that I did because I'm in a little bit of pain, but I'm not in like piercing, lightning hitting my body pain right now. And if I just left it there, the next time that I run, it's going to do the same thing. And what I discovered is I thought it was the kind of thing I could just stretch out. So I spent 3 months doing yoga, swimming, stretching it out. And then I went for a run and it came back. So clearly I need something a little bit more aggressive than stretching it out. So you have to, it's great that I engage the sunk cost fallacy and I stop the run, but also I need to do the other thing, which is repair. I need to do the resolve part, which was resolving to get better. And then you actually have to get better by repairing. And then you can recover and come back stronger, right? So when we look at comic books and we're like, well, it's good that they got canceled that run. It's good to repair. And sometimes I think we get very bent out of shape where a franchise doesn't come back right away. For a while, there was no Deadpool book. And that was crazy to us. We're like, how dare there not be a ongoing Deadpool book? It's Deadpool. He's an evergreen staple. He should always have a book, right? But what happened? There wasn't a great pitch for it. They didn't really have a place for him in the market. It wasn't really resonating. And they waited a little bit and they got that Cody Ziegler pitch. And it's been as good as Deadpool has been for a long time. People are bent out of shape that there's no current Captain Marvel book, but maybe there hasn't been a pitch. Maybe if there was another Carol Danvers book right now, it would just be failing. I think that it's sometimes a good thing. I know we're all needy fans and we want all of our favorite characters happening all of the time. But I think sometimes we need to take a step back and say, where's the repair? And you know what? We have no guarantee that the comic company is actually conducting repair there. They could just be not putting out that comic book. It doesn't mean the editors are trying to have good ideas. It doesn't mean they're having writers refine pitches. It doesn't mean that any positive thing is actually happening. There is no indication that that is actually the case. But if it creating something better, right? Like we haven't seen any kind of cosmic characters for a while. We've been saying, where are the Guardians of the Galaxy? Where's Nova? Yeah, Marvel could have just kept pumping those out, but you know what? We've got Hickman doing Imperial right now, and hopefully that's going to launch all of that more strongly. And so I just want to say that like, you can't really have one without the other. We can't bitch about the sunk cost fallacy if we're not also looking for how to repair things after we stop sinking in the cost. And to make that personal again, yeah, you can say, I'm going to stop buying XYZ book. I wasn't reading those omnibuses. I wasn't enjoying it. But then what does the repair step look like? Are you going to sell some of the things that you didn't enjoy? Are you going to take a fresh look at your budget and figure out how much budget you have for books? Are you going to take a fresh look at your time and see how much time you're willing to commit to the books? Or are you just going to say, I stopped buying the books? Because you know what? That was a resolution to stop buying the books, to engage the sunk cost fallacy and to stop sinking the costs. But if you never repaired, you can't ever recover. And so that is very much on my mind in my physical health this week. And a lot of why I did not do the show yesterday was not only because I to take care of, and if I didn't, I was never going to get to repair and recover. So I said, you know what? It's a Monday for me here in New Zealand. It's the start of the week. Nobody has a big to-do list. I'm going to do all of those things that I need to do today. And you know what? The stream can just happen with crummy internet, apparently, the next day. So I am trying to remember that it's not just resolve. And that's why I don't like New Year's resolutions. If you don't do the repair and the recover, you don't get anywhere. And that's the same thing with your comic collections. And that's the same thing for our comic book publishers. And we always want them to get better because we want great comic books. So that was my moment of crisis today. You know, I never know what I'm going to say before I get onto the screen. So I'm noticing that it's still saying the internet is pretty low power. Does that mean I'm just like a blurry mess? Because I could reload this. It might mean that I might disappear for a minute, but it could make things better. So let me know. I'm just going to put on my glasses and see some of the things you all talked about during that. And actually, I'm going to pick this one up right now because I think this is a really good finish to all that. James Gunn, says Richard Bradley, has canceled things from that original announcement video because Kevin Feige won't cut his losses and cancel Blade. Two different approaches. Yeah, people were very bent out of shape when James Gunn said, you know what, we announced some stuff, but we're changing it up. We might not do an authority movie. We might not, you know, have them come out in this order. And I think that that's because people get very attached to these announcements and they want the announcement to happen in a way that we're all going to enjoy. But sometimes you have to know when to cut the losses. And the thing is, cutting the losses one step from the finish line is not a great idea. So that's why we're also flustered about Marvel Masterworks, getting cut off at the knees. So many of those books only need 1 or 2 more volumes to be great. And they're like, we're canceling the line. So sunk cost fallacy, you want to also be able to profit from the things you've sunk the cost into. Canceling a movie at the script phase is a great time to engage the sunk cost fallacy on that movie. Much better than waiting until it's already been shooting, or like Batgirl, you've already got the whole movie. So apparently I am just a blurry morass. So I'm going to hit reload and see if we get any improvements. I will be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you no topics at all. You can just decide. As we've learned from IT, sometimes you just got to turn the thing off and turn it back on again. So let's see if this provides us some better internet and the audio is coming out. You know what? We just are going to do what we can do with what we've got what we've got. So let's just scroll up and see what people are saying. Ryan Wilson is here. I've been talking to in the near mint condition Discord. Haven't been watching my shows, so I'm so far behind and I don't want to be spoiled. Jamie C47 saying some cost fallacy is me with Ultimate Wolverine right now, knowing there's only 4 issues left, but having bought every book so far. Yeah, and I get into some cost fallacy where I don't stop reading a book, even though we know I hate that book. Like that, stop reading the book, Krisis. You could always come back. This week I caught up on a book I wasn't liking, and I liked it, catching up on it. So that's, it's always out there for us to enjoy. Lance McNair saying, howdy, I'd finished reading Lassie Come Home and crying and how beautiful it is. Also about halfway through the Golden Age, Superman, DC Finest. And Javier Hernandez is here. Ryan saying sunk cost fallacy is a major problem with me. I have a few runs I just don't care about or are far behind, and I just keep buying them wanting to finish the run. And then we had me being frozen, me being a giant lump moving vaguely in the middle of the screen. D. Marcel is here for what must be his 13th viewing of the show. Patrick Borcheldt saying, I buy a lot of Marvel Omnis. I love my collection. I reread most of them. If I read the badly written runs, I can appreciate the not so popular ones and love the greatest of all time runs. And I do believe that. I am not somebody who thinks I should only I don't think it's healthy to only consume the best tasting things all of the time. Like that at a point gets into decadence, right? If we only eat the meals that we know are the things we love the most, even if they're healthy for us, I think you got to try new things sometimes. And I think that's the same thing with music, movies, books. I think if we filter our list down to only the things we are sure that will please us, I just personally don't find that to be very healthy. And so I don't think you should only read good comics. And I think it gets tricky if the thing that you mostly read from is omnibus, because then it's like, well, I only read omnibus. I don't want to buy bad omnibus. And so I'm only going to buy good ones and I'm only going to read good comics. And which is why when I see people on all these places we discuss things online, all these forums who are like, what omnibus should I get next? I'm like, that should never be a question. The omnibus you should get next is the omnibus that you know is good and you want to read. But if you're only reading things in omnibus, you are sometimes going to have to get bad omnibuses. That's just the game. The phenomenal AC is here saying, don't forget to smash that like button. Ryan saying, I used to think I could have all the Spider-Man, Omnis, X-Men, and then I finally realized it would be impossible to have every omnibus for every major character unless you have a lot of room, which is kind of why I like the Epic collections and the DC Finest, although the Epics are out of control and I don't even buy the modern Epics. So they go, let's count how many cubes they are. I think actually it starts in this cube. Starts in this cube. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This one's 15. This one's double stacked. 16, 17. This one's double stacked. 18, 19. This one's double stacked. 20, 21. And then there's more in that cube. 22. And then I just got a shipment that is probably going to fill up the rest of a square. So I have 23 cubes of Kallax, which are about 12 inches wide each, of Epic collections. So I thought that would be a space efficient way to collect them. I've basically already got more than a full Kallax full of Epic collections. So yeah, I mean, space, anything that's of value to you can be part of the sunk cost fallacy. So say the amount of space you're sinking into something, that is also a sunk cost fallacy where you're like, I've already put so much space into it. I have to keep putting more space in. As somebody who's a borderline hoarder, no, because the answer to that is you always have to move into a new house, or you wind up just rage throwing out things at points and you don't even realize, and you're throwing things out that you paid for and that had value. At some point, Planet 628 saying, I wish they'd repair Darkhawk. Ugh. Rexmo joking, maybe Starlink can help with the internet. I don't know if they can help with very much Super Drop saying, while they're gone, let's talk shit about Greg Land. How dare you? Greg Land could draw this hair magnificently. Super Drop. Tyler Bear, hello to you, my friend. Almost finished with Wonder Woman by Greg Rucka Omni, and it's going to easily land in my top 10 runs of all time. And those J.G. Jones covers are just gorgeous. Yeah. Kid Krisis has been inspiring me to just sit down and read more Wonder Woman, because she's just been sitting reading my golden age Wonder Woman so much. I'm like, gosh, why am I not doing that? Rexon was saying, I don't have time to read bad comics, too much good stuff. And yeah, I think there's a line between trying to consume a broad range of an art or any kind of thing you consume and deliberately hate buying or reading or eating something, right? We don't generally hate eat. I mean, you might hate eat something that's good for you, right? You might like hate eat broccoli, I guess. Kid Krisis loves broccoli. But generally, if there's something that tastes that bad to us, we don't force ourselves, right? And we don't generally force ourselves to listen to music that's like physically painful to us, unless we're just reviewing that album one time. But like sometimes when it comes to reading and watching, we truly will hate watch or hate read something. And I don't think that's never what I'm saying. I think once we know that we hate something, it's fine to turn it off. But I'm saying keep consuming enough new things that you find out what you hate. Tyler Bear saying, I try stuff on Hoopla and drop it all the time. Yeah, I'm always saying to people, if you're one of these people who's buying blindly, that's, to me, that's wild. I would never buy an omnibus not anymore if I hadn't read something from it first, or at least knew the reputation and wanted it as part of my collection. I blindly buy this stuff, but I have it for research for Crushing Crisis. Like, it's tax deductible for me. So that is a little bit different. Biff Bound Palace here. Hello to Johnny. Cedric and Ellen saying, I have a lot of back issues I still have to read, and I can't because I'm behind with the current issues and with my European comics and my manga and my books. Welcome to my life. What would be the best Wonder Woman omnibus? I think if we had to have a top, honestly, we probably could just say, a top two, because it's probably Perez #1 and Rucka. I mean, Silver Age is fine. I think the beginning of Bronze Age is really good when we get it. But I don't think anything. Oh my goodness. Everything's against us today. I don't know that any other Wonder Woman, and I guess some people would probably say New 52, Chang and Azzarello. I don't really rate that too highly. It feels like a Elseworlds Wonder Woman to me. But I think that's the top three. What else could you say other than those three? I don't know. And Paul Goodrum is here. Hello to Paul. And then we're pretty much at the bottom. Ryan just talking about, I think people think others are hate watching reading when really they're just checking out what they enjoy and that I'm not liking it. I think that's true too. A lot of times people are like, well, don't read it if you hate it, but you've seen me every week. Like sometimes it takes me a while to figure out if I hate something. I want to give it like 5 issues. I want to see where the story goes, right? And then once we get into me just screaming, you will see, you've noticed over the course of this year, when we get to something that I'm just screaming about and that's the only reaction to it, I usually drop it at that point because that's no fun. It's fun to listen to me scream like twice, 3 times, and then it's like, all right, we've heard it before. And also just saying hello, I don't know what accent that was, to Mr. Tex. Just finished Nightwing Compendium Volume 1 before hopping on. Nice to catch me live. Okay, we are going to move on to some comics. I have taken a lot of notes today because I want to be able to distinguish the difference between these things that I hated so much and try to give you some texture on that. So we will do our best. Also, I realized after making the PDFs here, I did not actually take any images from the Marvel Digital books this week. Luckily, they weren't that interesting, so we'll only be missing the 4 of those, and I think everything else I have images of. So let me go ahead and share my screen again, and we will get through the actual books. As always, if you are making comments on the books that we are actually talking about at the time, or maybe like one book behind, I will do my best to share them because there's a dialogue, and not everybody agrees with me, and that's what's awesome about having you all as an audience for this show. But if you're commenting on something that's been several books ago, or if you're like trying to have a philosophical discussion about the nature of the way that Greg Land draws hair, that's going to have to wait for the break. And the break today, I think, is going to be at the letter L. Okay. Yes, the 5th of Jack. Crisis on a Monday. What? The world is upside down, but the internet is currently working, so we're going to forge ahead. Okay. As we all know, I don't read 2000 AD. But and I don't even think that's a very good cover. Nothing against Judge Dredd. I just see them do better covers. And there's also a 2000 AD sci-fi special, which brings us to my first book of the week, Absolute Batman. So I think the message on a lot of the books this week is there are certain tropes that just do not work for me. And when a comic book leans into that trope, I find it hard to engage with it, but that trope might work for you. And so I still want to be able to articulate that. This is by the regular team of Scott Snyder, Nick Dragotta, Frank Martin on colors, and Clayton Cowles on letters. And this book, we have our absolute Batman captured in Arc M, and I love this concept of all of the different arcs lettered throughout the globe. But this does this thing that never really works for me, where we got this person trapped in a situation and we keep pushing them to their limits, and more cartoonish things happen. So first they're like, we've stripped him, we've searched him, we took things that he had embedded in his calf, but that's okay because he still has like a lockpick in his mouth, and apparently they didn't find it. So then Bruce breaks out of that, and then they beat him and he beats them, and then they put him back. And they're like, he won't eat, so we've got to give him IV bags. But then he uses the IV bags to make a chemical in his toilet, and then he breaks out. But at a point, it gets so silly for me that this naked Bruce Wayne, who's been locked in this room for 137 days, is like making weapons. He pulled out 8 of his teeth to make claws. You've lost me at that point. Like, I just have a suspension of disbelief problem when you, and I know that we're trying to say that the character is resourceful. And I know that I like things sometimes that are ridiculous. I liked when Batman fell from space in the Chip Zdarsky run. So there. But I just think sometimes when you take it so far and you're trying to make this character so resourceful and put them at their bottommost and make them pull out all of their teeth, I just stop believing the story. It doesn't resonate for me anymore. And that's what this Batman story really was. It just took him so low and put him through such extremes. I get that Batman's meant to be resourceful, but it just got to the point that it was silly. And I don't think that, to me, is not like what I'm reading this absolute universe for. Tyler Bear saying, I still have not liked anything by Scott Snyder. I've tried, just not a fan. Yeah, his opinion of the world doesn't resonate with me really at all. Ryan, buddy, I know it's been a little while. Here, we talk all the time, but we're like 3 weeks behind. This is July 16th comic books, because I will not skip a week, sunk cost fallacy. So we're just forging ahead. So yeah, this is 3 weeks behind where the weeks. And here's the thing. Some of you want to see the bat butt, and some of you like this stuff. Some of you are like, yeah, I want to see him like take out his shin bone and crack it in half and use it as a sword. I understand that. My dislike of this trope does not equal your dislike of the trope, but I'm just trying to express to you why I didn't like it and all the things I said about it, and then to be like, and then I beat him to a pulp. You know what I really always bothers me, and Jason Aaron does this too a lot. Every bone in his hand was broken. Okay, well, then he's probably not going to use that hand for like a couple of years. I know people have broken every bone in their hand or every bone in their leg or all of their entire collarbone, and they don't go back to being Batman 2 weeks later. So I'm just like, I need just a little bit of balance and suspension of disbelief. Next, we come to Absolute Flash. Now, the artist changed on this. It is A.L. Kaplan, but we have Adriano Lucas back on colors, who really set the distinct color look. Of course, this is written by Jeff Lemire, and it's lettered by Tom Napolitano. But this artwork, I just hate it so much. There's a specific thing. Sometimes I just get hung up on details. You know, we care a lot about art and colors and letters in the show. It's not just about stories. This artist, AJ Kaplan, draws eyes with the entire bottom lash in the eye. I don't know how to show this to you other than to just try to zoom in really close on this. Do you see this? The whole bottom of his eye is spiky. That would be the outline of his bottom lash, but it's drawn in white. That's like something a drag queen would do to make their eye look bigger. As a comic book thing, I don't really appreciate it. So, I mean, there are other things about this art that I don't like. To me, it's just like, and there's those eyes again. It's just like Archie Comics caliber art, which is fine. It's okay. It's good, but it doesn't strike me as the best that DC's house style has to offer. That said, Adriano Lucas is coloring this so much better than the fill-in colorist last issue, because he's giving it that amount of pop. He's picking certain colors that are going to stand out in every panel, certain elements of the red. Even when we're in this underground kind of grayed out look, we're still getting things that really pop and vibrate, and that's Adriano Lucas's color style. That said, we're 5 issues into this. Nothing has happened. There is nothing interesting about this story other than Flash found a jacket. And I just think Jeff Lemire is the wrong choice for this, because he only writes about sad dads and bad dads and dads that were glad, but now they're sad, but they once were rad. And that's just not enough for a Flash comic book. And I do think this art is terrible. So I do think this might have reached a drop for me. Perhaps I will check back in it. on a couple of months, but I just cannot keep reading it. Jean Remy saying the art doesn't really fit. Tyler Bear saying the art just has a very vacant look, similar to Invincible. It's like the inverse of what Mignola does with Negative Space. I don't know. It looks too sanitized. That's a very interesting way to talk about it. Yeah. But Jean Marie says, I really enjoyed the story, just didn't like the art. So, different things for everybody. Okay, now we come to the Marvel digital books. We're just going to do a minute to talk through all of these. So this is Steve Orlando's Astonishing Avengers, number 22. This continues to be just a really fun book. It's art by Andre Genolay, who's like a major Marvel artist. He does art. He did art in the last run of Runaways, colored by Carlos Lopez. And I like that the Avengers are having a fight in Wundagore with a bunch of B-list Avengers that we don't see in the main book. And then we have Doom fighting the High Evolutionary. That's cool. Then this Astonishing Spider-Man book, issue number 35. I don't even have words for this. So Scott Aukerman, the terrible writer of this terrible comic book, found out that the book was going to be canceled because it's terrible. And so since he didn't have enough time to finish his arc, he decided he was going to write himself in Grant Morrison style to say that to have him argue with Spider-Man about the arc ending and stuff. But I do want to show you one good thing that came out of that. Here is one of the screenshots that I took. He shows Spider-Man what his plan was for the rest of the book, which means he actually gives us the complete continuity order of all of his stories annotated in between the stories from Amazing Spider-Man's runs. Why can't every comic book do this? Scott Aukerman, as much as I've cursed your name as a Spider-Man writer, now that I know this is possible, I'm going to be asking for this as a footnote on every comic book. Why can't, come on. This is what Crushing Krisis is, and you've all got it. Why can't you just share it with us? So I just had to laugh about that. And then Astonishing X-Men, it was barely an issue. Basically, they're on this island, something's been hunting the mutants, and it turns out that it's a symbiote. It's like a venomate symbiote, and they're feeding it mutants on this island. It's fine, and I actually do kind of like the story. I think that Alex Packnadell is writing it very well. I think this is the tightest that Philip Seddy's art has looked on this book, as colored by Michael Bartolo and lettered by Clayton Cowles, but this particular issue was kind of just a nothing issue. There wasn't really a whole lot to it. Okay. Avengers Academy, by the way, I usually spend a whole minute talking about. They're doing 2 issues not by Anthony Oliveira, which is fine. The man deserves a break. But this one that was meant to highlight Disability Pride Month, written by Elsa Sunansson, was it was bad. It was so bad. It was like Rogue is in it. I don't know why it was Rogue. It could have been anybody in the entire Marvel universe. The art was bad. It was, I think it really gives comics a bad name when you're like, oh, we're doing this as some kind of pride special, queer pride, disability pride, Latino pride, whatever. And then you give us a really bad comic book. I'm like, oh, it's hard to feel pride about that. So it's kind of just it's just one of these, you're blind and you have a seeing eye dog and they can't take it away from you. Oh no, they took it away. There's laws about that. It's just this very kind of blocky, declarative version of a timeline. Look, Superjob, I always say I am happy for Marvel and DC and all of their ilk to put me out of business. A, that will never happen because there will always be people with questions. I know this. I see the search terms. But B, I thought when Epic Collections came out that was going to put me out of business because I'm they're all in order. It's perfect. No, there's still questions. It's never going to be perfect. But I do think it's weird that they're relying on us lay people to decide on the order that stories go in when the editors have those lists like the one that they just showed in that Spider-Man issue, and they could very easily just put them on the bottom of the final page as a footnote. It just does kind of drive me crazy that they don't do that. Okay. Now we have Batman and Robin Year One. Now, I want to be clear. This was my pick of the week, and I did not dislike this issue. It's by, of course, Mark Waid, co-scripting with Chris Samney, who is drawing it, and then colored by Mateus Lopez and lettered by Clayton Cowles. The thing about this is it's just surprisingly slight. Every time we lean back into this mob and Clayface plot that is happening to the side of the main plot, it just feels like we lose the spirit of the book about a little bit because Waid and Samney are doing such a great job of this early Robin and just seeing Robin have the first experiences that he has with Batman with these characters. The first time Robin walks a tightrope, the worst time Robin mistakenly picks up a gun, the first time they're chasing somebody and somebody gets away from them, the first time that Alfred sees Robin Dick juggling in his room and realizes how talented he is, all of this stuff. And there's this great Alfred scene of Alfred saying, you've been avoiding grieving for your parents. And I know you want to pretend like everything's perfect because you put on a show, but you've got to grieve at some point. And Dick turns around with tears in his eyes and he says, because performers don't cry. And they're both so shocked. Alfred's shocked that he yelled. Dick is shocked that he even yelled at Alfred. And then Dick runs over to him and hugs him. And in the chronology of this book, this is the first time that Dick's really shown any physical affection for Alfred or Bruce. This page is going to stick with me forever. Like this to me is a critical all-timer Dick Grayson page. The issue was a little bit slight, but this is the reason why it felt slight to me, is because when they focus hard on the relationship stuff, it's beautiful. And I just don't know if we need as much of the mob subplot, because this is the story where we should be staying. Also by Mark Waid, we have Batman Superman World's Finest. This is Mark Waid with Adrian Gutierrez on art, Matt Herms on colors, and Steve Wands on letters. It's issue number 41. I hate few things as much as I hate Bizarro. So when I saw this cover, and it's a whole Bizarro world, I was like, oh no, because the backwards writing, them all being silly. The thing is, it's hard for them to like have motivation as villains because they're just silly villains. And I say all that because I actually really liked this. And I think it's because it showed Bizarros as horror villains. Like it opens up with Dick Grayson as Robin being chased through a forest by one of them. It shows, and just really cool art here. I haven't always loved Adrian Gutierrez's art, but I love this perspective of like, it's almost our hands reaching in towards Superman, and we see him reeling back to punch, and he's burst out of his panel, and then we see the small panel of Robin and Batman behind him. Like, this is a cool page layout. It's a little crazy, it's a little crowded, but like it's doing things to really like lead the eye and do interesting things. And I just think to use the Bizarros as a horror villain, I think that's how people would react to them. And I think that really sets up that you can play a little bit more with like the mystery of them and what are they doing and what are they planning, because it is unintelligible. So actually, to me, this is one of my favorite recent Bizarro books I have read. I just found it really, really cool. I did not read Battle Chronicle Soul Striker. It's one of these Kickstarter books that came out and finally got a physical issue. In this case, though, it is by, Kickstarter are used interchangeably to mean any crowdfunding. But this one is interesting because it's by a major artist, V. Ken Marion. And so I actually would have loved to read an indie book by him. I went on his Instagram. I looked all around to see if there was any way to get it, but I think you could have only got it if you had crowdfunded it. I had already dropped Be Not Afraid, although some of you might dig it. It's about a small town where a woman had sex with an angel. And so, but for some reason, the child that she has as a result of that copulation is the Antichrist. And so the kid is terrorizing the town, and an angel appears to her and says, "Be not afraid, we're going to kill your son." I just wasn't really, I was like, okay, that's a cool story. Like, I didn't really need to see like him keep terrorizing the town and find out how he dies. I kind of got it all from that. But if you're interested, you're interested. So next comes Benjamin. Now, as you'll recall, last month is issue number 2. My big complaint about this right off the bat, although I loved issue number 1, is why are you doing Christian Ward covers when you have such an amazing artist like Leo Max on the interiors? The interior of this book looks nothing like Christian Ward, and it's spectacular. I have no problem with any page of art anywhere in the story. I absolutely loved it. It's written by Ben H. Winters, colors from Luca Bertelle, and letters from Becca Carey. This book, I love the concept, right? This sci-fi writer wakes up in a hotel room. He doesn't know how he got there. He barely remembers who he is. Now him and this bellhop from the hotel, who happens to be familiar with his books, are reading through all of his books and trying to figure out which of his books has become reality. The problem with this one for me, and I'm not saying that it was bad, but it was a lot of exposition. It was kind of like a lot of exclamation exposition. Whoa, what? Let me explain. 2 pages of explanation. Wow, really? Whoa. Page of explanation. The thing that was so fun about the first issue was the joy of learning about this universe, learning he was an author, learning something sci-fi had happened to him in the real world. This kind of like took away that, and we just kind of put hats on hats. You're a clone. You're a bomb. You're a clone in the body of a bomb. You're a clone in the body of a bomb in a simulated universe. You're a clone at the bottom of a bomb in a simulated universe. And it was just like, at the point I had so many hats on that I kind of like forgot what was fun about the story. It is the art is brilliant. Leo Max is incredible. And I think if you like that kind of winking nod at a Philip K. Dick story type of plot, I think that there are a lot of things that you would enjoy in this book. It's just, for me, as a 3-issue book, it's only a 3-issue series, and this is the second issue. I'm like, well, if you lost me on the second issue, I don't have a ton of hope for where this is going. So speaking of third issues, this is the third issue of Blood and Thunder. It's a Skybound book from an original Robert Kirkman concept, but he's not on the creative team. It is written by Benito Cereno, drawn by E.J. Sue, colored by Masasik, and lettered by Russ Wooten. Now, I really dig the concept of this book a lot. I love this woman who's a bounty hunter because she doesn't really want to be an official police officer. She's got her dad's old gun that is an AI gun that talks to her all the time, and she's hunting this creature that's broken out, and he's moving down through the layers of the planet Earth. Great reveal of why planet Earth now has layers of different society at the end of this book. But this was another exclamation book. This is a trope that I do not like. I do not like books where everything explodes and then somebody falls and they go, oh, effing ow, damn it. And then there's another explosion. And the next page says, shit, these things are $4 now. You could maybe get away with that if it was 25 cents, but at 25 cents, these things were packed with plot. And I just think that this book, I love the F word. I love dropping the F-bomb. I have no problem with that in a book that's meant for readers that are not all age readers. But if your whole book is just your main character saying, fuck, how did that happen? Oh shit, I think he got them all. No. Shit, I don't know. There's no characterization there, and it's really hard to engage with the story. So this was just kind of a very Robert Kirkman issue, even though Kirkman didn't write it, of this bad guy just ripping through levels after levels of Earth until finally he flies away from Earth. And to me, after the first two issues were so intelligent, it just wasn't any fun, which is sad because I really thought this book was going to debut right at the top. I really thought it was going to be my number 3 book of the year because I love the first 2 issues this month, but this just felt like I know some people like action books, and I know for some of you, you're going to be like, this is a lot of fun. For me, it kind of just lacked the thickness that it previously had. And you know, Bunkmaster B, as a Benjamin myself, you know that I'm always here to attack you and everything you're about. That's one of the major themes of the show. No, I'm just joking. And while we're taking a break, let's say hello to Andrew Standish, saying hello to Christ and the gang. First time poster here. Hello. I'm looking great. And as we know on this show, flattery will get you everywhere. And talking my language, that Dick Grayson scene I showed was awesome, just like me. Oh, that is so kind. If you're going to be nice to me, then I'm going to start having a good time, and then this could spiral out of control. I don't read The Blood Brothers Mother from Delistery, Dust Larceny. We still don't know what it's called, but it's written by Brian Azzarello, and I don't generally like his books. So the next book that I read this week is Bring On the Bad Guys Abomination, which is the third in the series of these Bring On the Bad Guys one-shots. This one is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, appropriately, because he is the ongoing writer of Hulk right now, with pencils from Sergio Davila, inks from R. Jimenez, and colors from Arif Pronto, letters from VC's Travis Lanham. This book looked spectacular. I mean, shout out to Sergio Davila. He just made Abomination look so big and like creaturey, and he had so many lines and things. But this was another one of these tropes that does not work for me. It was a double cross and a double cross where the villain was in prison, but the villain had set up being in prison so that the prison would send him to do the thing that he wanted to do because he knew he would manipulate them to do that. I'm a big suspension of disbelief person. And if I get to the end of the book and I'm like, I don't know how that could have worked. I'm not saying you can't have a flight of fancy. I'm not saying the Abomination is not a smart guy. But to have that be the whole frame of the book, it just really didn't work after 2 very clever issues about how characters were being manipulated by Mephisto, but were also trying to manipulate Mephisto. And then also in here, we get to the middle of it. And it's, I mean, if you've been reading Philip Kennedy Johnson's Hulk, it's very much in keeping with that. There's just pages and pages of this big, rotting, carcassy mess yelling at Abomination ripping it up. That, again, to me, Blood and Guts has a place. I like bloody comics sometimes. Blood and Guts is not plot. So we have a plot that I didn't really like, which is that Abomination set it up so he'd be captured and then set on this mission, very Suicide Squad-esque. And then the center of it is just him ripping things to shreds that are bloody. To me, there's just no there. The backup story is actually kind of interesting. It's written by Mark Guggenheim, who's been writing it from the first issue, and it has to do with this deal with the devil that, what is her name? Sister Sorrow, Sister Sinister. I always forget what she's called, but she looks real damn good. I love art from Michael Stas Maria and colored here by Dono Sanchez Amara. I mean, it just looks cool. I'm just so into her visual design. She kind of looks like Gila a little bit, but she's got a little bit of something different with the white face and the tears down it. And I just really enjoyed it. And I also really like how Michael Stas Maria draws Mephisto just uncomfortably sexy. So, I don't feel like I could recommend this series of one-shots. I was so hyped on the first one, the Doctor Doom one by Mark Guggenheim, but it just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. This wasn't fun. Like, I don't feel like I learned anything cool about Abomination. I don't think it was a fun adventure for Abomination. I don't think I would give this to a random fan of Abomination if that thing were to exist. I just don't really understand what Marvel's trying to accomplish, but I read it, so I guess they got me. Catacomb of Torment is actually the subtitle of this week's stream. It's like what I like to call this week of reading that I rated an average of 2.28 out of 5, my 5th lowest average of a week of all time. But no, I did not read this new horror anthology from EC Comics. I did not read Cauldron of Horror, another one of the things that I've been using to refer to this week of comic book reading from AC Comics, although a pretty cool cover there. I did not read Circuit's Seduction Revenge from Devil's Due. Devil's Due used to be a real comic book publisher. Like, you used to be able to get their comic books digitally. They existed. Now it just seems like all they do is crowdfunding campaigns, and there's and it's just this stuff. So, okay. I dropped The Cold Witch, A Tale of the Shrouded College from Charles Soule and Will Slanu because they lied and said that each of these miniseries from the Shrouded College could be read as a standalone. I tried to read the first issue. It was not standalone, nor was it especially interesting. But it's about kind of this mage college that sends their Auror type people out on missions, and one of the Aurors died, and now his magical ex-girlfriend is angry about it. It's fine. I think there's other things that do the concept better. So now we come to a book I did read, which was Deadpool and Wolverine #7. And if you've been watching me regularly, now that Joshua Cassara is no longer on the art here, you know that this has become a coloring book for me. Not that I'm coloring it in, but I love the colors from Guru EFX so much. And I mean, I don't know if anybody's exciting me more coloring Wolverine, but also let's just look at how cool this strife page looks. Yes, I want to give some credit to Robert Gill as the penciler here, but Robert Gill's pencilers are fine. I've never been the most excited about Robert Gill pencils, but Guru EFX is just really finding some bit fun in the contrast, in the boldness, and I just and obsessed with how he draws Wolverine. In terms of content, there was not much in this issue. Basically, Wolverine is with Strife, Deadpool punches Maverick, the issue ends. Like, there's nothing there. And I just think, Benjamin Percy, I don't think he's good at Wolverine. I think people keep buying it, which is great for him and for Marvel, I guess. But this page looks cool. It just takes me back to a Jim Lee place. And I don't think that Gill particularly draws like Jim Lee. I just think it's the way Guru EFX is coloring this. And that's all I have to say about it. There's really just nothing happening here. So let's continue to the death of the Silver Surfer. Now, I really liked the first issue of this last month. It's written by Greg Pak with art by Sumit Kumar. I think one of his first works for Marvel, colored from Frank D'Amato, who I always enjoyed, and lettered by Joe Sabino. And it's kind of just looking at this terrestrial anti-alien bureaucracy agency that's trying to get rid of aliens all over the planet, but also they're trying to mine something off of the corpse of Galactus in space. I don't even remember him being a corpse, but then we're kind of playing this he's a mutant thing with Silver Surfer, where he's giving apples to kids, but then the police shoot at him, but then the kids, he makes the bullets go away, and then the kids are like, you're bad. I just don't think that's the right plot for Silver Surfer. I had some excitement for the first issue, but this was just a wreck. I mean, the colors on Surfer himself were good, but all the colors on the faces, they're just bad. I mean, I hate this kind of gradient style of coloring on the face where we kind of just make it look like somebody has a beard to make their chin look so dark, and then we light up their heads so much. Look at his face down the bottom, very much that. That's basically a drag queen trick of drawing faces where you go so dark on the face contouring to try to make the light parts light. But if you do that too much in a comic book, people just start to look like these weird emaciated skulls, or it just looks like their whole face is kind of this brown mess, because that's and I expect a lot more from Frank D'Amato. So no, it was bad. The colors were bad. The art looked horrible, which is crazy because I love Sumit Kumar's art, but the colors are not right for him. There's some Galactus nonsense that makes no sense with any Galactus lore that we know. There was some Scar stuff that's not explained whatsoever that I guess if you've been reading Greg Pak forever, you would get. I really had high hopes for the first issue because Greg Pak often delivers for me, but this was a bomb. I mean, bad. It was really bad. And the Silver Surfer here, it doesn't even feel like Silver Surfer. It could have been Wolverine. It could have been Cyclops. It could have been the Hulk. Like it doesn't feel specific to Silver Surfer at all, other than people keep saying like, well, he's an alien. Well, he's an alien. Well, he's an alien. Well, he's an alien. And I don't think it's good. It's not good. Now we come to Detective Comics issue 1099, everybody's favorite tax form. It's written by Tom Taylor with art from Lee Garbett, colored by Lee Luffridge, letters from Wes Abbott. And here we're wrapping up Batman's mission to this country where he's chased the people who have captured Harvey Bullock, but he's also there with the Penguin. And so we've got this fun buddy cop stuff of him, the Penguin. The Penguin's like, I want to kill people. And Batman's like, don't kill him. The thing is, I actually really, really broadly like Tom Taylor as a writer. I don't really typically get a lot of the critiques that people have of him. This is one of those issues where I was like, oh, I see it. Because this is what Taylor gets criticized for. It's a nothing issue. Nothing happened. It wasn't funny. There were no jokes. It's just Batman flatly moralizing as they beat their way into a base to do what? To find this guy at the bottom of the base who lives forever. And Batman just keeps being like, don't kill them. But we can't kill them. You can hurt them. I'm going to leave the room so you can interrogate them as hard as you want. I'd prefer that you don't, as long as you don't kill him. It's like Tom Taylor, when he just gets, I think he's so much better when he's writing a complex hero that doesn't just boil down to the simple ethics of the hero. Because I do agree when Tom Taylor tries to give us this object lesson on ethics, which he very much did in X-Men Red back in 2018, that's where he loses me. Because he's such a funny writer. He's such a heartfelt writer. I think he writes such good pacing that when he just boils down to ethics, I think his books just don't feel like there's a lot of meat on the bones. And I think the difference between a good Tom Taylor run for me, pour moi, a good Tom Taylor run for me is a run that has heart, that is funny, that is not just about like a hero kind of flatly being like superheroes or social justice warriors, which is something I believe in, but there's got to be more to it. And so when he turns in an issue like this, I understand all of the people who are like, I don't really like Tom Taylor. Bunk, if you missed it at the top of the show, this has fallen out of my top 10 at this point because of this issue. I thought that it sucked. Okay, let's continue. I did not read Dread the Hall H. I thought about it, but it's a horror one-shot about comic conventions, and I already think the comic conventions are horrific. I've only ever been to 3 in my entire life, and I do not intend to go to any more, so I think the book would be lost on me because I don't care. Okay, next we come to Eddie Brock Carnage, another book that I once thought was good and has since changed my mind about. This is written by Charles Soule, art from Jesus Says, colors from Matt Hollingsworth, and letters by Joe Sabino. So here's the thing about this terrible comic book. It was terrible. Nothing happens. Again, I just think that this week was so decompressed. And I think if there's anything that is going to eventually drive me away from reading modern comic books, it's the level of decompression at the point that these are $4 and $5 issues where truly a comic book exists to have one conversation. Eddie Brock basically is like, again, lost in the middle of a field, and Carnage is like, I kept you alive. And so that's it. That's all you need. There's 10 pages of that plot. That's all that happens in that plot. He wanders down into a city. Carnage is like, we're going to kill all the people. There's nothing there. All we needed was one caption box to tell us he woke up in a field and walked towards the city. There, I solved your 10 fucking pages, Charles Soule. Meanwhile, we have this other plot with Muse, who we kind of like faked out, like, was Muse the person he was really chasing down or not? And we found out he was. And the whole 10 pages of Muse is Muse needs some art supplies. That's the 10 pages. He goes to an art store. He's like, I'm going to make art out of all the people in this store. And then we like see him kill them as if it's supposed to like evoke the diner scene from Sandman or something. No, man, because this is a bunch of bullshit, low-grade nonsense. You didn't need 20 pages, certainly not 20 pages drawn by somebody of the caliber who says to do that. And then we end the issue with this scene. Oh, then there's Carnage coming out of Eddie's hand to talk to him. Literally 10 pages of this. And then we end the book on Muse being like, I figured it out. It's not just Carnage. He's another man too. You could have done this entire issue in 2 caption boxes. And I actually like Charles Soule. I think he's actually a very clever writer, except for I broadly hate all of his indie work, but I do generally like him at Marvel. But he does this thing every so often in a run where he'll write 2 or 3 issues that I'm really into, and then he does one issue where it feels like he just gave up and he didn't turn in anything in the script. He did it on that Legacy of Vader series, which I'm actually really, really liking a lot. I just didn't understand. I did not understand. Ryan Wilson says, do you even read Carnage? Do you read it with Venom? all the symbiote books connect. Well, after the Venom War at the end of last year, they kind of splintered. They've been kind of doing this thing lately where they interweave the Venom stuff and then it goes away, and they interweave and it goes away. And so they've done it where they keep doing that with Carnage, and then they kind of bring them together for crossover once a year or so, and then they push them apart. But this time, Carnage got Eddie Brock in the custody battle. So the all new Venom book is not about Eddie at all, and this book has Eddie and Carnage in it. So it's an interesting split. They don't interrelate right now. I'm sure they will collide because Marvel always does that once a year, but we'll probably mark safe for another 2 or 3 months from them colliding. So you can just read one and not the other. William Lee saying, come to New York Comic Con. That will literally never happen. Even if I did enter the United States borders again, which is highly unlikely to happen anytime soon, the chances to get me in the giant petri dish of New York Comic Con for what? For what reason? What would I do there? I already own everything. I already talked to the people. It would be fun to like see Omar and like see Tyler, who I just used to do This Weekend X with, and like that kind of stuff. But like, there's nothing for me there. It's like, I put it this way. Remember when Amazon came around? Yes, we all do. And malls just got less fun because you're like, I could have all that stuff from Amazon in my house. And then you would even go to the mall and you'd be like, there's nothing good at the mall anymore. At least I went through that in America. Here, I like malls again. Why? Because there's no Amazon in New Zealand. I mean, you can get Amazon deliveries, but there's no like in-country Amazon. And the malls have things that are not necessarily sold online. So like malls got cool for me. So I do, but as a comic book reader, I don't want to have to fly to New York to like buy one issue that got released in New York Comic Con. So for me, there's nothing a Comic Con offers that I want. I understand there's people who like the cosplay. They like the community aspect. They want to meet the creators. They have back issues that they need. I have none of that. So I'm not coming to New York Comic Con. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can meet creators. I truly do not wish to meet any comic creator ever, which I mean, probably means I'm never going to be a person working in the comic book industry, but I think that ship has long since sailed anyway. No, I just don't care. I don't really have that like meet my celebrities. I did it a couple times with musicians that I like, and they're just people. They're just people. They make cool art, but like, it doesn't mean they're interesting people. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not trying to like argue with you, William Lee. It could be like a neurodivergent thing for me. Like, I just don't get excited by that idea. I'm like, what? I have people here. I can go knock on my neighbor's door. They're a person. Why would I fly 6,000 miles to go see a person who's written a comic book? I can just knock on my neighbor's door and be like, what do you think about this shitty Carnage comic book? And they're like, I don't know. I've never read a comic book. That would be a fundamentally interesting conversation to me, just as much as meeting Charles Soule and shaking his hand and being like, why do you write such shitty Carnage comic books? Like, it's just the same thing to me. Okay. Anyway, you can tell that I'm having a lack of focus. This is Endless Night. It felt like an endless night reading this comic book. It's part of the London verse at Mad Cave. It's issue number 2, written by Mark London, art by Tom Dernick, colors from Juancho Velez, and letters from Simon Boland. This almost does something right, but it never does that thing, and so there's no reason to say anything nice about it. It's a poorly written action flick. None of the characters act like characters. They're just these 3 characters that all scowl at each other because Tom Dernick seems to be having a lot of problems with faces in this, and then they run around. They're like, on the hotel internet, I got a video of Reed leaving the hotel. Let's go. You can't just leave me here. I'm not letting you out of my sight. God, I hate your car. Then bring yours. Like, there's no, all they do is, we're in the car. What's your deal? My deal's this. Like, and I get it. Like, I know I'm the same person who's saying you've got to tell me who the characters are. So I was happy they slowed down to exposit a little bit about this character, because I totally forgotten. This is kind of like an event book of all the Londonverse books, like Wovenheart, which I actually really like, at Mad Cave, kind of bringing all the characters together, and Exit City, which I like. There are a lot of good books that came together here, but it just feels like all of these characters are just running from place to place and being like, I don't like it here. Freeze right there. Like, it's not a story. There's no narrative. It's just a bunch of people running and pointing and yelling. And then we got one page of exposition in the middle. And then we introduced another character that at least Tom Dernick drew well. But I mean, for this to be your big event book, a lot of indie publishers, I think it's a gift to have a shared universe. And I think if you're an indie publisher and you have enough shared universe titles that you can summon together an event book, that event book should be the best advertisement that exists for your comic book universe and your heroes. Valiant was shockingly good at this from 2012 to 2022. Every time there was like a Valiant event, it was like the best thing Valiant had put out that year. And that's like a thing that comes from good editorial. And I think the problem here is maybe that like Mark London is his own editorial, because at all of the individual books this is pulling from were all better than this Endless Night. It's garbage. And if that's like your big like, ooh, everybody like me, we're doing an event with all of our characters, then you in trouble, baby, because that is not attracting any new readers because it's hot fucking garbage. Now we come to speaking of hot fucking garbage, an X-Men book. This is Exceptional X-Men. I wish it would go away and I would never have to hear its name again. It was written by Dr. Eve Ewing. Al Ewing, not a doctor. Written by Dr. Eve Ewing. Art from the artist that we're getting now that Carmen Carnero has left, which has sucked all of the magic out of this book. That artist is Frederica Manson, who's doing her best. Colors by Nolan Woodard, who I do very much appreciate, and letters from Travis Lanham. Eve Ewing just has never had a plot for this book. And so after 10 issues that it took to get to like, oh, it's Mr. Sinister, literally that took 10 issues. Now there's nothing left, but she's got to spill time before this Age of Revelations thing. So she has the characters walk into a park and find this glimmering thing. And then Ironheart arrives and we have a D-list adventure with a D-list character like Ironheart. Again, I like, but if you're going to structure a whole issue around a character's cameo appearance just because she got a Marvel show, maybe you should have released it a month earlier when anybody was vaguely talking about that Marvel show. And then Kitty throws them an anniversary party for being X-Men, maybe for a month. I wasn't clear. I think in story time, only like 2 weeks have gone by. But then when they're like, yeah, we are X-Men, Kitty's like, no, kids shouldn't be X-Men. And she runs out of the room. What the fuck is happening here? This is ridiculous. Kitty throws them a party and then she storms out of the party because they say that they're happy for the thing that she threw them a party about. What the fuck are you doing, Eve Ewing? This is one of the X-Men books that people have been holding up as one of the decent X-Men books. That we're in trouble if this is one of the decent X-Men books. What was actually happening is people like Carmen Carnero's art because she's a modern master. We got 10 issues of that art, so people were overlooking how terrible this story was, and now we're stuck with just the story. The art is not bad. Frederica Manson is doing a decent job. The character is still very on model. Her Emma Frost is straight off of that Carmen Carnero's Emma Frost is, so good art switch up that didn't like totally throw me. And Nolan Woodard's colors still very vibrant, still very saturated. Really great to maintain the color look of this book. But I think what we're finding out is that there's never been anything that this book has ever been about. One Wheelchair X saying, seeing Riri was fun, appreciated after watching Ironheart, but it was definitely stalling the plot till the end. More plot next issue, I guess. Still love Ewing's voice for Kitty, though. James Abel saying, Ironheart crossover seems forced in. I did enjoy Kitty's romance relationship, giving us a whole issue about that and not the New Mutants. Or give us a whole... Yeah, there is a kind of funny scene where Kitty's like, you left your toothbrush at my apartment, girlfriend. That has no character, but you're a girl and now I'm bisexual, so that's enough of the story, I guess. And she's like, you silly goose, that means I'm gonna come back and need to brush my teeth more. And Kitty's like, oh, so that's plot. I guess that's plot, right? Okay. I Like Popeye, unfortunately, does not come out digitally. It's like Popeye through a manga lens, and every time I see a page of it somewhere that somebody's like taking a picture of with a physical camera, it looks amazing, but no chance to read it digitally. I think it actually came out originally digitally. I don't read Far Down Below by Chris Condon, which is kind of this Goonies-esque two kids in a town, go to the abandoned house, and they fall through the bottom of the house, and they find something that was buried there, far down below, I guess. I don't know. I found it boring. G-Ville, comics by Jimmy Gownley, is a comic book. Disney's Gargoyles, Demona, is also a comic book written by Gargoyles creator Greg Weisman. However, I did read Ghost Pepper. This one, I think I had the most complex feelings towards about anything this week. So this is written, drawn, lettered by Ludo Lullaby. It's only colored by Adriana Lucas. Everything else is by Mr. Lullaby. And it's this world that has, I think he does a great job of introducing the world. Like there's this scene about people throwing in change into a helmet because they're paying tribute to this person who saved the world from like basically a giant monster. And now we're in the post-apocalypse, but we're fine because the world got saved from the giant monster. So we see that there's kind of this mythic buildup of this person, but that we're in a world that is still very post-apocalyptic. It's still very factionalized. I've fully understood it. And here, this very cartoony art really, really worked for me. This is an artist Ludo has worked on a lot of World of Warcraft stuff. He drew Battle Chasers at one point. So it's very much part of that like Joe Mad Americanization of manga lineage from the 90s. But that was 30 years ago and it's changed. Some of the pages like this one really, really worked for me. At points, it just got crowded. Like this page, we're following this woman, Ghost Pepper. She cooks with all the spices. She has like a traveling food cart. Sometimes, and I could follow everything that happens. She's pointing at the customer. She picks the pepper. She picks the pickled pepper. She puts it in the little pot that she's giving to the customer. Then I can follow it. But I just think that in terms of a layout, I was a little bit lost about why we were focusing on these things that we were focusing on this layout. And as rad as her cool character design is, with this like deep V long sleeved shirt with an apron and then these little like, you know, goggles in her hair, then we get another female character who is in the same exact character design a few pages later. But ultimately, she meets this weird awakened ashy gray guy who's like super, super strong. And is he the hero that saved the world? Or is he being tracked? Why does he get so angry? There's this little thing on his shoulder that like puts him to sleep if he gets too angry. There's interesting elements here. And for me, it really kind of felt like the first 30 minutes of a Final Fantasy game, like where you're playing the main character and then you meet like the conflict character and you're like, oh, hello. And you're like, oh, wow, you seem to explode every 5 minutes. And they're like, oh, life is hard. And then they're like, let's adventure together. Like it kind of felt like that. So I have hope for it. I think it was very stylish. And I think the stylish parts of it were enough to overcome that I kind of got lost in the layout a little bit some of the time. And I think there's a chance that this could be like a really cool fantasy story that has a really cool Final Fantasy kind of feeling to it. And I do think the art is really cute, and it kind of gives, it's not your typical American floppy comic book market art, even though it's part of that Joe Mad tradition. So I had complex feelings about it. I didn't love it, but it was definitely the most interesting book from Image for me this week. G.I. Joe, also from Image. This issue, you know, Joshua Williamson was the writer, Andrea Milana as the artist, Lee Luckridge coloring, and Russ Wooten lettering. The thing about this is that sometimes Williamson just phones it in. Sometimes we just don't get a full issue from him. This one is very phoned in. Like, there is a pretty cool action beat where Major Blood and Raptor have cornered Baroness and CoverGirl in Paris, and we have a fight and to capture them. And then there's a beat where we have this one Transformer who's in the Joe base, but none of the Joes know that he's there, but it's okay. He's a good Transformer. And that's it. That's really all there is to the issue. Williamson, again, these things cost us $4 to $5, and you have 20 to 23 story pages with these artists who are they're fine art in the modern day. These people are being asked to draw so many setups, so many characters, so many panels for you to have a whole script, and the only concept in your script is there's a fight, I guess. They get captured, I guess. That's not enough. It's not enough. I will again remark that this was my least favorite week of comic books, in one of my 5 least favorite weeks of comic books of the past 7 years. So there's that Ghost Pepper review was as positive as this is going to get. Okay. So now we have Giant Size House of M, Giant Size X-Men #1. Wow. Could we put more logo garbage on this garbage cover of this garbage comic book by Jackson Cullen and Colin Kelly? That said, or Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. That said, this was the best one. It was the best one for a few reasons. I think the art from Francisco Mana and colors from Edgar Delgado was pretty great. There's no Olivier Coipel, but it kind of gave me enough of a vibe of House of M that it kind of felt a piece with it. And House of M, it integrated well into the House of M universe. Like, this made sense. You could go back and read the original House of M and be like, oh yeah, if we inserted Ms. Marvel into this, I bet some things would happen in a different order, which is not a thing that I felt about any of the terrible one-shots that have come before this. They've all been dreadful and totally disrespectful to the original stories. This one kind of respects House of M. And again, I like this art. This is a good page of art. I think the likeness of Logan is good. Kitty is good. I like these of color. This, I mean, we kind of almost took it briefly to like a little bit of like a Pepe Larra's place here as we see Legion square off with Scarlet Witch. This had some cool ideas in it. And I think this is the first time in this whole, it was the 4th of these one-shots, where it kind of felt like, oh, it is kind of interesting to see Kamala Khan, not like she's trying to change history, but she's trapped in history and she's trying to make sense of history as she encounters all of these things. I think the fact that they couldn't really play that she was messing up time so much because the House of M is already messed up time kind of made it work. And here, Kamala's tendency to just vomit plot beats, at least the way that Lansing and Kelly write her, kind of makes sense, because she kind of is like, Beast, we need to borrow your secret time machine, because of course she knows about that, because she lived through the period of all new X-Men and she's like met some of them and she kind of knows the tea because she was on Champions with Cyclops. So like, Kamala functioning as a walking encyclopedia of Marvel history is funnier when she's in House of M, which is like a messed up reality to begin with, and it's not just a grimdark reality like Age of Apocalypse, so it's hard to appreciate Kamala as a character. That said, this is still terrible. I mean, it's still horrific. There's nothing positive I can say about it. It's a terrible, terrible, regretful comic book that should have never been made, ideally. But having said all that, This is the best I think that they could do. Then there's a backup story with Wolverine in it that was truly unreadable. It was written by Sal and Amen. It's about some past Wolverine who gets involved in some mobsters. At least it had art from Martin Coccolo, who is the main artist of Wolverine before he rotated off for a little bit, and colored by Matthew Wilson, who I always love. But like, oh boy, sunk cost fallacy. Maybe it's time to end the Saladin Ahmed Wolverine run while we still can. And I've actually been liking it okay, but like if this is like, it's like coming soon in issue 13, I'm like, keep it. Let's see what people were saying while I was doing that screaming. Did I like the original House of M event? I do, because I think it was interesting that it truly was. I mean, Whedon was so slow with Astonishing X-Men that Bendis was like, how about we do an event that has the X-Men and the Avengers? And I think the idea, I love when comic book stories come from just needing to fulfill a requirement. And the requirement was like, let's do a story with these very hot characters, and it can't be in continuity right now because it'll mess up the book. So it's like, well, what if it's a whole side continuity? What if I do all my, and clearly Bendis already had all this Scarlet Witch stuff in play. So yeah, I like it. I mean, I don't love alternate continuity stories, but House of M kind of breaks the rule a little bit for me because they are all themselves. Like they're just themselves in a briefly different reality from which they very quickly problem solve what the problem is. And then the conflict is just in that reality. That for me, tropes wise, is an alternate reality story that actually works for me. Garbage sized House of Mediocrity. One thing I'll give this issue, says One Wheel Tracks, is that it's centering Kitty, who isn't a focus in the original event. So it fits even better. Note to self from Bunkmaster: minimize the trade dress. If I ever make a comic and Moment of Krisis like it, also make it a comic I probably don't like very much. We do have an intersection. We don't hate each other. It's just too many words. Here's the thing. I mean, as somebody who used to manage graphic designers and graphic design process, it's just too many different cover looks. Like we've got this giant size. It's in white. It's in, is that in the, I don't even, that's not the same font as the House of M font. Even we can tell from the E, because the E in the House of M font has a great, there's more space between the splines. So that's one font, and it's in white with a drop shadow on it. Then we have House of M, which is a totally different blockier font, and it's almost like a collegiate font because it's got those really square tops on the O, and it's curved. So that's like a different color look. And it's not just a drop shadow, it's just got thick black outlines on it. So now we've got two different font looks. Then we have the giant size X-Men thing below it. That's the same giant size as the giant size above, but now that font is like slanted to the side to match the X-Men logo, even though they're two different fonts from each other. Although maybe the giant size font is the same as the X-Men font, but then the X-Men font, of course, has that 3D thing, and then they're all in a lockup on top of the House of M like icon. That's insanity. Who approved that? That's not, that to me just reads like when a manager comes down from like the department you're trying to ship the thing for, and they're like, I just need to see all the logo marks on there. And the designer is just so frustrated at the end of the day. They're like, fine, they're on there. There you go. And then that thing gets printed and it looks like garbage, and the garbage goes out into the world. Okay. Oh, what? Omar said he liked Gail Simone's X-Men. Omar, you know, that's a very busy man. He has a lot of pressure. He might just need a nice lie down and a nice cold beer, and to just spend some time reflecting on those thoughts. But, you know, Omar and I, much like Bunk and I, like some different things sometimes, and that's fine. I read Godzilla Destroys the Marvel Universe. I did. I didn't read Golden. What can I say? Okay, I'll try. Jerry Duggan, who wrote this, I do enjoy him a lot of the times. The thing is, silly Jerry Duggan works for me. And silly Jerry Duggan writing for Javier Garron's art works for me. But Jerry Duggan writing silly for Javier Garron's art, and that silliness is Godzilla being silly. And then like in the middle of this page is epic, right? Godzilla's foot is coming down. We have this really good version of the Fantastic Four happening here. But then you can start to see, even though Sue Storm's doing this great, she's got the abs, her arms are all out, you could see the silliness starting to happen with like the face that Johnny Storm is making. Then we have Reed with like these giant sweat droplets falling off of him, and like it just keeps going out back to funny. Like we have this, like all the faces that Garron has these people pulling are these like very like funny goofy faces, and there's all these little punchlines in the art which are not just him. The punchlines are coming also from Duggan, like Quicksilver making this face that he's holding the guy with the mop, but the way the mop is makes it look like Quicksilver has a ponytail, but Cap's running, but Cap has like got room for one more, and so then Quicksilver's holding Cap. It just didn't tonally for me, it was inconsistent with this Godzilla story where we're supposed to be like Godzilla is destroying the entire Marvel universe. I don't know. The idea that Godzilla was this big a threat and the amount of like low-key, goofy, gaggy silliness in the plot just didn't seem like they connected to me. James Abel saying, this was fun. I think it would read better as a trade than single issues. I don't read Golden Rage, Mother's Know Best, because it wasn't interesting at all. I wish I wasn't reading Gotham City Sirens. I'm really tired of reading Leah Williams' annual audition to write Harley Quinn while she just also has to write, seemingly by legal requirement, Catwoman and Poison Ivy in the most boring way possible. But at least, we have Heining's art to look at here, drawn or colored by Ivan Placencia and lettered by Tom Napolitano. Napolitano. I always want to say Napolitano. Heining's art is like a little too busy for me at this point. Sometimes I just lose what's happening a little bit. And especially when you have nonsense writing with no story. I mean, there's a whole 10-page sequence here of Harley Quinn is just swinging in a giant ball. Like she's like, I came in on a wrecking ball. And she's just like swinging around. And that's like 5, 6, 7 pages of this. I don't hate action. I don't hate fun. I like story density. And we finally get to the end of this issue and we see that, and again, some really cool pages from Heining. Heining can draw the hell out of these pages. And the issue ends up like, we're on a spaceship. It's called Unfit for Orbit. We've just gotten to this point. Literally, there is nothing motivating any of these characters to do anything or be themselves other than they're trapped in this place. Like there's no connection to them as Gotham City Sirens. They're not being Gotham City Sirens. They're not being themselves. There's no real plot. We've just put them into a situation which they have to escape. It makes me want to escape it because it's torturing me. I'm the one getting tortured. Now we come to Herbie. This came so close to being my Marvel pick of the week, and it is marginal. It is truly, truly marginal. But marginal this week was like a vacation in Fiji. This is written by Nathan Stockman, who also draws it. And in this, I didn't get any images from the Marvel digital books. Herbie in this one has a crush on the robot receptionist at the Baxter building. And so Reed and Sue kind of set them up, and it's cute. It's just cute. It's very cute. It's on Marvel Unlimited. If you like cute things, go and read it because it's cute. Okay. Next, we come to Herculoids, which I don't read. I wish the epic covers reflected any of the quality of the interior art or plot. I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer, which is truly one of the worst books that I've read this year. And luckily, I knew how to get rid of my sunk cost there, which brings us to Imperial by Jonathan Hickman, redefining Marvel's cosmic space with artists Ivan Coelho and Federico Vincenti, colored by an uncharacteristically vivid Federico Blee, and lettered by Corey Petit and Ariana Maher. So here's the thing that I both like and don't like about this book. I love how vivid and animated it makes Marvel's cosmic universe. It really feels like we're watching like a cartoon, a high quality cartoon of Marvel Cosmic. I think if you grew up with Marvel Cosmic in the 2000s, or even if you didn't grow up with it, you just read a lot of it in the 2000s, Marvel Cosmic was heavy. It was bold. It was very martial and warlike. The stakes were big. I'm not saying this is a comedy plot. It's actually a very interesting Jonathan Hickman plot about, it's very World War I, like a series of assassinations leading to a galactic war. Was the war the point of the assassinations? I love that. And I love that he's not really doing anything too uncharacteristic with any of these iconic space characters. I think it's going to have great effects. And I love how it's brought Earth characters into it. I love using Shuri here. I love using Bruce Banner and Amadeus Cho here. I just think that the art style and the way it's very pithy and snappy for Hickman. It flows really fast for a Hickman comic book. I just think for me that's jarring because when I see Hickman and I see Marvel Space, I think it's going to be this very kind of like stodgy affair, much more like the way that he wrote X-Men with Lionel Francis Yu on it. So I think I actually don't have a problem with it. Tonally, tropically, a word I just made up. I don't. It's just interesting to me. And actually for this I mean, look at this page. This is gorgeous. You would never know this is Federico Blee. There's no blue glow. And the characters all just have such vivid, bright, saturated qualities. He's not like easing the gas off any of their colors. Everybody in this book has their own bold, distinct color look of their own, whether it's this gold look that not only is Nova, but Nova and Star-Lord are kind of in this gold. Then we have all the Wakanda people. They're kind of blue and black. Then we have the Hulks. It feels like every faction in this book, even the Shi'ar are, kind of have their own color range that they're in that helps us keep track of this huge cast of characters. I think it's really, really fun and cool. So I didn't love it, and some of it didn't make a ton of sense. Like, this is actually T'Challa as Black Panther, and it's actually Bruce Banner as Hulk, and they meet each other randomly in space, and they're like, let's have a fight. Like, no, they would probably talk it out a little bit. But I do think it's a lot of fun. It's going to read spectacularly in collected edition. Not that the cliffhangers are bad or it's decompressed or anything, but Hickman is clearly just doing this thing, which we've seen him do many times before, including on his Infinity crossover in 2013, where he's got this whole story conceptualized. The act breaks are just act breaks, but when we all get this in trade and we can read it in trade, it's going to read incredibly, incredibly well. And I just think it has such a beautiful animated quality to it. James Abel saying this is Secret Invasion 2, but this time in space. Imperial 2, Jamie C47 saying, I like this more than the first issue. Action, intrigue, got big in the political schemes. I love the art and the characters felt more right to me. That's interesting. I think I like issue 1 a little bit better because I think the setup of the intrigue was maybe a little more interesting to me. And this one, the space battle, did feel a little rubber bandy. It was like, we're getting the ships. We left the ships. The Stargate blew, but we're back to the ships. It just felt a little back and forthy, but I didn't dislike it. I just think I like the pureness of number 1 a little bit better. This is not actually someone named Guillermo. This is an inside joke. If you saw our DC stream on Your Main Condition last week, as someone who doesn't read single issues, I wanted to tell you, you're my guiding light of what trade paperback to look forward to. So thanks for all my hard work. And that's one of the reasons I do this. If you're not somebody, I try not to spoil any of the plots too hard. So if you're somebody who just be like, ooh, what's good? Like, you can kind of drop in on any one of these over the course of the month and be like, ooh, that looks interesting. Ooh, that interior art is good. And that's why I really try to credit all of the interior art and like really show you interior pages, because it's part of, selling you a book. Okay. We're almost at the break. I don't read Invincible Universe Battle Beast because I don't like Ryan Ottley's art at all, and all this is one big bloody fight. Some people might like it. If you like that, there. I told you why you might like it. For me, it's not. Then we have a Judge Dredd magazine. There are a lot of Judge Dredd things happening, and now we come to King Spawn. What's interesting about this is I always say that it's kind of like the small ball King Spawn title, written by Rory McConville, art from Mila Dre Sinar, who's been absolutely spectacular this whole year, colored by Ivan Nunes, lettered by And World Design. What I say about this book is that it's kind of Spawn in miniature. Here, Spawn is worried about one FBI agent, one kid that was maybe kidnapped and killed. But we kind of already came to the crux of all that last issue, and this is just epilogue. This is Spawn catching up to what we already know. It's a little bit slight, but it's good. First, this art. This art is incredible. The way that it's colored is incredible. Spawn just looks bold, iconic. His costume looks amazing and toyetic. The darkness is dark. It's the way that it swallows these characters up. This is colored extraordinarily well. And I think it's a great cap on what's been happening in King Spawn all along. It's an epilogue, and it's kind of brutal. Like, there's no happy ending here. This is the kind of personal Spawn that we used to get more of between arcs of the main Spawn title. And ever since Todd exploded the line, we only get these kind of smaller Spawn beats here, and everything in the main Spawn book is like some big heaven, hell, dead zones, whatever. I think it actually might be to the detriment of the line. This story, it's not the best story I've ever read, but it kind of makes Spawn more interesting than doing that big stuff. And it's almost, in a way, Spawn is a symbiote that in a way was kind of ripped off of Venom, that like it kind of mirrors what's been happening with Venom over the past couple of years, that Ewing made Venom so big and made it so intergalactic that like it stopped being an interesting book about Eddie Brock anymore. And some of the most interesting things that were happening about Venom were starting to happen off to the sides of Venom, like with like Red Goblin or with Carnage. And sometimes you got to just bring it back to basics. To me, this is the Spawn book that kind of brings it back to basics, and the art is outstanding. So I almost made that my image pick of the week. Now we come to Crypto, the last dog of Krypton, and I will take a break after this, drink a lot of water because I'm feeling very hoarse, and get to some of your other comments. This is written by Ryan North. It's drawn by Mike Norton with colors from Ian Herring and letters from Lucas Gattoni. So I thought this whole series was going to be about Crypto on Krypton, but no, the Krypton issue is just the first issue. Now we get to see what he goes through on Earth until he like re-meets up with Clark on Earth. And apparently, and I have no idea if this is in continuity or not, this is all about how he was briefly adopted by Lex Luthor. A thing I find that Ryan North often has trouble with is he's such a good writer, and I love him so much. And anytime he writes about science, the science is spectacular. When he's really got a short period of time to like really lay it on thick and make us like or dislike a character, I do find he's writing in those brief moments totally falls apart for me. And it's weird because I love Ryan North a lot. I have for a long, long time now. He's basically got one issue to basically say that not only that kid Lex Luthor with red hair is an asshole, but he also is an asshole who abuses animals freely. Like, you didn't have to do that much heavy lifting to convince me of that. And so the page after page of him abusing this sad little dog, I was like, this character already exists. And I get that like this book might be for people who don't know comics is going to sell to the movie crowd, but it just felt so overbearing and it didn't feel like there was any story other than Lex Luthor being like, I'm bad, who's bad, Shimon, and like that was all there really was to it. And then he turned out to be bad and Crypto moves on to the next situation. Really, after such a great first issue, this was really truly disappointing to me. And now we come to the middle of the week where I get to take a breath and drink some water. Jamie C47 says, Crypto number 2 had a gut-punching issue. Lex is despicable. A bit of a cheap technique. Your words, not mine, but I agree with them, as I often do. To pull the heartstrings through a full issue of dog abuse, though. I wish there was some proper comeuppance for Lex. Super job going back on and saying, imagine a world where the latest Spawn issue was the best story you ever read. I don't know if I could handle that. And James Abel saying, Crypto, this issue is very hard to read and has played with my emotions during it. I wanted to send Lex to the Phantom Zone. Bunkmaster B, I use the stream to watch all the books that Krisis hates and just go and check those out. Well, then you're in for a big pull list because I hated just about every book that came out on July 16th. Here's the thing. As I got to the middle of the alphabet here, I was starting to think, is this week a sunk cost fallacy? If there was a week that was truly this bad, should I just get on and be like, this week was bad, we're not talking about it? And I thought about that, but there were some good ones in there that I did want to talk about. But it also, anytime we're disliking, remember when COVID first started happening and people were leaving reviews for Yankee candles and they were like, these candles don't smell like anything. And it was like, COVID, you lose your sense of smell and taste. Candles don't smell like anything. Maybe you had COVID because everybody did. Like, I think sometimes you have to check your taste, right? You have to be like, if I'm hating all music this week, is it just not a week I should listen to music? So I definitely had a moment of like, do I just hate everything? Am I a miserable human being right now? And so that's why I went out on that run, which turned out poorly, but I'm still happy I did it. I listened to a bunch of new music. I listened to Subway by Chapel Roan 1,000 times. I listened to the new Lord album. It was terrible. But I did find some things to like. And then I went and read a couple of comic book issues that I had around that I've been meaning to read. And I liked those. So I think it's always good to kind of reset your gauge. If you're feeling that miserable, maybe you're just miserable. Some days we're miserable. But I checked. I used all of the careful calibrations that I have and all of the wires and gauges and meters. And I don't think it was me. I think it was the comic books. I think it was a really, really bad week of comic books. Now, I think I've gotten most of your big chats, and I've actually even totally departed from our main discussion for some of them, but I'm just going to scroll back up and see if there's anything interesting that I missed along the way. So excuse me while I do some scrolling here. Jamie C47 has been kind of hate reading Bendis X-Men. I already knew I didn't like it. I'm not sure why I'm reading it again. It's just kind of a cap to the whole Utopia era. You know, and I think it's interesting as comic book readers, it's almost like we're reading a world history of a world that we don't exist in. And you can be reading a history book and there could be a part of the world history that you don't love, but you read it because you're refreshing your memory about history. And I think it's hard to plug that entirely into a hate read category because like even though we hate the execution, we still care about the plot. And that's unique to comic books. And I guess like all kind of forms of narrative media, but it's the same for me when I'm listening to albums. I'm on a Billy Joel chronological listen through now, and there are Billy Joel albums that I do not like. I'm on one of them right now. I think it's Nylon Curtain. I just don't like it, but I'm listening to it because it's interesting to see how he evolved and how it connects to the album that came before and how it connects to the album after. I don't classify that as a hate read. I wouldn't say what you're doing is necessarily a hate read. You're reading it because you're interested in going through the narrative altogether, and you're at a part that you don't like as much. You know what? You could skim some stuff. You don't have to. Nobody's going to put you in prison if you don't read every single word. One Wheelchair Xing, I've been going back to Krakoa era X-Men books for future videos, and after existing and From the Ashes for the past year, it's made me reappreciate even some of the weakest Krakoa books. I had the same thing. I went back and I just was looking at some Krakoa stuff that at the time I didn't like, and I was like, wow, even the worst Krakoa book is better than pretty much the best of the from the ashes. Yes, the Gail Simone Wonder Woman is up here, Origins and Omens, and they announced that they're going to put out the second volume to complete that and cover everything that is in that Gail Simone omnibus. So I guess I don't need to get that omnibus now, although I might. I mean, I do like omnibuses and I do like Wonder Woman, and Kid Crisis likes reading the Wonder Woman omnibuses. Let's see. Then we got to talking about some comic books, and I'm just looking for if there are any. Edwin Billiot says, you would just think that comic companies would just print the comics in the correct order, but I'm just being silly thinking they would do it right. Well, and also, like, we're in a world, we live in a world where there's multiple titles and multiple characters and characters appearing in multiple places. But I just think it's if they have that resource already, and to them it doesn't have value, like they're not saving it to like make you spend $1 to get that reading order, why not expose it? Like Jordan D. White, who's the editor of X-Men during Krakoa, has said many times that he has a complete reading order of all Krakoa. Why would you just not publish that? What is the benefit of not publishing it? I don't understand. So I think that certain authors and certain publishers are actually really good at that. But like as an example, I look at the new Energon universe by Kirkman. It's only 3 books. I don't understand why they don't have an explicit, here's how these books fit together in a timeline at the back of every issue. I just don't. And I know that 90% of readers might not pay attention to that, but to just put it in a little box on your letters page, the 10% of the readers that do care about that would have it. And I know that your editors have it. So like, why would you not? But I don't know. There's a lot of things I would do differently if I was in charge of the world. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Pasta Jensen saying, bring on the bad guys looks like something I have to check out. Always like Dr. Doom and Green Goblin. I think those two are really, I think ultimately the idea is that it should be fun one-shot stories for like each of these villains that if you like these villains, you might appreciate. But you've got to bring the quality. It's hard to do a good one-shot story about a character and make it feel like worthwhile and make it feel like something you might actually revisit. The Dr. Doom one, I loved that comic book. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I don't know if it was the best Dr. Doom story of all time. The Green Goblin one was truly fascinating. The Abomination one just didn't really get there. Devil's Due, I remember this bunk, had the license to G.I. Joe about 20 years ago. That's a real dang comics company. Well, weren't they like a spinoff of an Image? Weren't they like some faction of Image who spun off? Maybe I'm remembering my lore incorrectly. Cedric and Ellen don't read much Deadpool and Wolverine. Too much disappointment with other Deadpool and other titles. Just going to scan through William Lee telling me to go to Comic Cons and me being like, I won't do it and you can't make me. Logan Wayne, we can come back to this in the break, but I'm curious to what musicians and artists I've met. Well, I really loved meeting musicians because Philly was such a great town for music and so many people toured there, and it was really easy to kind of wait by the stage door before or after and meet people. So I've met Garbage several times. They're my favorite band. They were nice. I mean, they're busy. They have a lot of fans all over the world, but they truly really do appreciate their fans, and it's cool to have met them. I've met a lot of my individual heroes. Like I've met Tracy Bonham, who I really love and is one of my favorite songwriters from the 90s. I briefly met Lisa Loeb, who has a reputation of being this awful bitch, which I think is just people don't like her because she's a woman and she's large and in charge. I mean, she's tiny, but she's large and being in charge. So yeah, I met like a fair amount of those kind of 90s people. I remember one time going into a Fiona Apple concert, the English trip hop band Morchiba was opening for her, and I just passed them on the street and they were super rude. So I was like, well, then I'm not ever going to listen to you, Morchiba. So yeah, I've met a fair amount of artists kind of in passing, or just because the venues were small, or because I waited by the stage door. But it's got, they're just people. And I always think back to that Tracy Bonham one, where like she's meant so much to me. And the first song I ever sang in front of people was a Tracy Bonham song. And trying to express that all to her in like 2 minutes at a signing table, she was like, and it's like, I don't even think it was a good memory. Like I don't know if I like got anything from like spilling my guts to her, and she didn't tell me anything interesting about her songwriting process. We just stared at each other for a minute. And I think that's the thing, like about meeting any kind of like actor you like or creator you like what do you want to get out of it, right? That's what it comes down to. For me, I want to have a unique moment. And I have this one songwriter who I'm obsessed with. He's one of my favorite songwriters in the world, Peter Mulvey, who I've seen well over a dozen of times, maybe not dozens, but we're getting close. And I've had so many personal moments with him because I've seen him so many times, and the conversation evolved, and I've asked him about specific songs and specific stories and specific travels, and he's asked me about my life. And so like I have vivid, interesting memories of that. And if I were to get a chance to hang out with him for 2 minutes in the future, I know exactly what I would talk to him about, and that would be significant to me. But to meet somebody like Ani DeFranco, who I've worshipped my whole life and is a huge influence on me, what would I say to get something? I mean, I guess I would meet her, but like she wouldn't remember it, I wouldn't remember it, so why would we be there? And so that's kind of, I know maybe it's like a neurodivergent thing where like you might just be excited to meet the people to meet them. For me, it has to have some kind of like meaning attached to it. So when I think of a Comic-Con or something like that, where I'm like paying to meet Kevin Sorbo for 30 seconds, I mean, not that any of us would, but like, what do you get? What is that for as a memory, right? So yeah, it's hard to explain, but that's where I am on all that. James, the Medium Answer, makes me sad. This book isn't doing good anymore. We're talking about Exceptional X-Men. You know, it could just be me. It could always just be me. That's always the disclaimer. I'm just one person, but it does seem like everybody is agreeing in the chat, or at least Patrick is. I fully agree in Exceptional X-Men. Complete bore fest. So bad. Jean Remy saying more like exceptionally mid. Super job, wagging their finger at me and saying, I told you I should have skipped it and just read something beyond the petrichor. I can't wait to read the second issue of that. James, the Medium Answer, saying, this X book feels like editorial wants certain behavior from Kitty. I don't understand why characters are just doing silly dramatic stuff like this. We've done this before. I agree. All right, let me get to some of your newer comments and then we can continue. One Wheel Track still makes me laugh realizing that because Astonishing X-Men was so slow, Kitty was gone for just 3 years max in the bullet. Not even 3 years. I mean, 3 years. Oh, 3 years in like real time, right? Like finally Whedon's run ends after 4 years to put out 24 issues. She's gone in the bullet in like spring of 2008. And then she comes back in like 2010 because she's there for Second Coming. So actually in real time, she's only away for 2 years, which is kind of funny. It's like not that long. Jamie C47, big shock for me to hear this. I really dislike House of M, but I do like the stuff that comes out from it, like Messiah, Utopia, Second Coming, Gillen, Carrying New X-Men. I wouldn't say I love House of M. I was saying for that particular kind of alternate reality story trope, I do think that is a good execution of that. All right, so now let's get funny story about Wrecking Ball. I did that Adventure Ropes course again. I told everybody a couple of weeks ago. And there I did a different course on it than I did the first time. And one of the things on that course was a giant medicine ball. You were clipped in above. So if you were to lose grip of it, you would fall and be caught. But you had to, and there was no like, there was a platform, but the medicine ball was just hanging there. There wasn't enough slack to get it onto the platform. So you had to kind of like take a leap of faith and like jump onto the medicine ball. And then your momentum of grabbing it swung you across this chasm to the other side. And did I sing Wrecking Ball when I swung across that chasm? You better effing believe I sang Wrecking Ball while I flew across that chasm. Okay. Let's see if anybody else said anything interesting. Hickman's Spacebook Delirium was really fun and snappy. Hickman, I feel, gets unfairly cast as this incredibly dense, blocky writer. Yeah, he is a fun writer. And actually, I think him as a fun writer is more fun. Funny that. Fun Hickman is fun. But yeah, I think people were like so surprised by his Ultimate Spider-Man. Like he does that fairly regularly. If anything, I'm often asking for fun Hickman. I think boring, slow Hickman is, funny enough, boring and slow. I'm like, I like that. He was much snappier in Fantastic Four. And then I think his Avengers just went on for so long and it just ground on for so long that the fun issues got further and further in between because he shipped all those side plots out to Avengers World. And I think that's what really solidified the reputation that he has for being this kind of like very slow guy. Look, Mr. Tex, if you like Invincible and you like Ryan Ottley and you like the visual design of that Battle Beast character, it's very fun to look at from that perspective. I do not really like Ryan Ottley's art. We went over it when I read the first issue, and like I'm not, a book that's just like a bloody beat 'em up book is never really going to be my favorite book. And because I don't like Invincible to begin with, I kind of just had none of the attachment. But if you like Ryan Ottley's art and you like bloody beat 'em up books and you already have an affinity for Invincible Universe, then it is going to hit for you on every possible level. Okay, just seeing a few extra things here. Planet 678 had a bad day and totally vibing on the miserable reviews. You know what? Sometimes you just got to get it out of your system. You just got to let the misery go. Lance McNair, sort of a moment of crisis. I've done some evaluating when I got into comics. I used to say it was around New 52, but the truth is it was way before that, reading random issues. And part of growing older has been me learning to stop selling myself short and considering other people more experts on comics than me. Everyone had to pick a random issue at some point. Yeah. And I think, Lance, that's a huge part of being in this hobby. And I think even though it works to my detriment or like Omar's detriment to tell you all, you are experts, you don't need us. Like you don't. everybody's an expert. And I just say, immerse yourself in the comics, learn about the comics, pay attention to the colors names, the letterist names, the artist names. That's all that I'm doing here. I'm just paying attention to the creators and have an opinion about, yeah, I know some things about color theory and I know some things about layout, but I'm just paying attention to why I like and dislike the art. And I do that so then I can tell you, even if there's a book that I hate, that you might like it. And I just think a lot of people who've been reading comics from the 90s who are like, oh, but I don't really know how to critique comics. You do. You just have to pay attention and interrogate the feelings that you have about the comics. And Lance, I know that you have that ability. And yeah, it's like to be like, oh, I'm not an expert. I don't know this stuff so well. No, any of us who've been reading comics for any amount of time are experts. We might not be experts that have every bit of continuity, dedicated memory. We might not have every letterer, whoever lettered. The people who amaze me are the people who like know every time an artist changed in the Silver Age. You're like, oh yeah, that's when Kurt Swan left and the other. I'm like, even modern comics, I'm not good at remembering down to that level. To me, that's fascinating. But like, they don't know more about comics than me just because they remember that. It's memorization. It's no different. Does somebody who's memorized a lot of Bible verses understand the Bible than you? You know, if you're a Bible scholar who hasn't memorized a lot of the Bible verses, no. Superjob spent the last few days reading 90s Moon Knight. Speaking of unreadable comics, oh no, that's on my to-read list. Don't tell me that. When you binge read like me, you spend as much time reading bad runs as good ones. Well, Paul Gundram is getting larger because I'm buying every one. There are more off camera that need to find their way onto the shelf, such as Zero of Our Crisis in Time Part 2. I have a huge haul around the world that I need to do. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but I had a pretty big stack of books to begin with, and then an even bigger stack of books got here, and then I also got some random odds and ends stuff, because I have promised I will show you everything that comes in the mail. And just like my beautiful fishing lure. And if you don't know why I have a beautiful fishing lure, you need to go back and watch the last haul around the world, which is where you will learn the important Krisis lore. But yeah, I do think there's going to be a haul around the world sometime soon. Jamie C47 saying, my seemingly controversial opinion is I like McKay and Simone, both much more than Dugan. However, both are much worse than Gillen and Ewing. Well, that's not all that controversial. Okay. John Remy saying, the way Dynamite has been collecting Vampirella has been making me crazy. Yeah, well, Vampirella, I think Dynamite kind of stands to benefit to being like, there's no continuity from Vampirella, because they do kind of want to sell each one on its own merits. But I do agree that the way that they collect it is crazy. And then, oh, now the internet's getting crazy too. Okay, we're going to do one or two more comments, and then we're going to move on to the other half of the books. Logan Wayne, I had an AMA question that weirdly fits with today's theme. What reading rules do I break when reading collected edition? Skimming, skipping, jumping, or anything like that? That's a really good question, because I do try to like really fully rate every issue. And if I'm skipping around or jumping, can I fully rate it? But I do have certain rules, because I never want to be miserable unless it's for your entertainment. So for example, in Silver Age comics, I will skip the captions, and people are like, how dare you? Look, man, captions at that time existed a lot of the time to explain art that was not seemingly sophisticated enough to explain itself, or to guide readers through the art who might be picking up their first comic for the first time, because comics were just on newsstands. So there's like nothing wrong with skipping it. If you're a savvy enough comic reader to know what's going on with the captions, you don't get any bonus points for reading all the captions. Yeah, you can make an argument. They're like, oh, but the captions are the prose and we want to experience the prose. But like, you can read a comic however you want. You don't have to read any of the words. You don't have to look at any of the pictures. There's certain comics where like, if I just do not like the art style and it's confusing to me or it's annoying me, I just stop looking at the pictures. I just read the word balloons. I'm not generally doing that for a stream like this, because here I'm here to like critique all those things. But when I'm just reading on my own and I get to an issue, I'm like, I got to get through this somehow. Yeah, I break all sorts of rules. I'll skim, I'll skip caption boxes, I'll skip art, I'll just approximately read, like, but I think that that's also speed reading as a skill. Like, if you've ever, speed reading is a little bit of a fallacy, because it's not like you can just read fast and get all the same information as if you read intently. But every medium, whether that's academic articles or comic books, you can learn how pages and art is structured and speed read to get the major points that you need without like reading every single word of dialogue. And that's often what I do when I'm working on guides for Crushing Krisis, right? Like, I do not read every single page of every single issue that's in a Thor guide. I mean, that's like thousands of pages across thousands of issues. So actually tens of thousands of pages. But I've been through every one of those issues, and I have paged past every one of those pages, but I'm doing it as a speed reader. And I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for particular battles, particular character appearances, particular moments that I've been thinking of and trying to figure out where they are. And so I think just like learning how to speed read a newspaper article or an academic paper to just glean the major points, that's a skill that you learn. And so yeah, I absolutely do speed read, but I usually save that for when I'm working on a guide, because I'm never trying to read 1,000 issues of something just to put a guide together. All right. I am to the bottom. Lance wants us to know that I read every Silver Age caption. Now, Golden Age, especially something like JSA, I probably skipped around a bit. All right. Let me get up the rest of my images here. And I purposely broke the book at L because I get to talk about a book that I like kind of a lot here. So I thought at least we could start on a positive note. And again, we all know I am not often this negative. There was just this week, I think there was one book that I rated 4.0 out of 5 this whole week. I am not usually that stingy. Like it's a bell curve. If there's a lot of ones, there tends to be a lot of like 4s and 4.5s. I think I had 1 4. I don't even know if there is 1 4 actually. Now let me just search really quick. Now oh, that keyboard's not turned on. Is there a 4? I don't think there was. Oh, that Robin and Batman book, which we're going to talk about as we go on. That was the only book I rated 4 above this entire week. That is rare. I am not that stingy. But there are more books that I like in the second half, so it's going to be a slightly more positive journey. Let's begin. This is Los Monstros. Here's one of my discoveries of this year. James Robinson, I love when he does these 4-issue in and out worlds, and I wish they were 5 or 6 because I feel like they're ending just as I fall in love with them. That's how I felt about his Welcome to the Mainyard. That's absolutely how I feel about Los Monstros, with art by Jesus Marino, colors by KJ Diaz, and letters by Jim Campbell. I love this world of this werewolf detective. That said, I didn't love this issue as much because it had to wrap everything up. We only have 1 issue left. And James Robinson, I think something he's really good at when he's on these short series is he knows exactly what the main story is. I want to learn more about the different kinds of monsters and more about their relationships and more about the Mummy Casino. That's not the point of this book. The point of this book is this one vampire and this one, former cop who's disgraced and now is a private investigator. And we keep a tight focus on that. Jesus Marino's art on this is incredible. And we get some like real moments of character emotional connection between him and his old partner, him and the vampire waitress that he wants to go on a date with. It's fascinating. And it really kept me hooked. So like part of me is just a little bit annoyed because like I wish that we had more time in this world and I wish I could spend more time in it because I love this monster version of Los Angeles. It's so, so cool. But Robinson knows what to focus on and what not to focus on. And so this is going to perfectly fill 4 issues. And honestly, I'm really urging you to read it. If you like the idea of a crime noir story with horror monsters, but it's not horror crime noir, it's just crime noir that happens to have monsters as its cast. If anything about that sounds cool to you, that's what this is. It is exactly what is on the tin. Cruel Angel saying, Los Monstros, one bad day. Cutter learns who the true crooked cop was, finds Vale, but is routed out to the night shift, and all I care about is him surviving so he can go on his date with Rosie. I agree. If this book doesn't end with his date with Rosie, I am going to be heartbroken. Okay. I've got the fishing hook from my lure, and I'm just going to dig it into my thigh for the entire time talking about this book, because that's going to be so much more enjoyable than talking about or reading this book. So I know I talked a big talk when we read the first issue of The World to Come last month. It's by Joe Quesada and Christopher Priest, reunited. I had so many nice things to say about the story, about Richard Eisenhower's colors, about Tyler Smith and Richard Starking's letters. I thought it was amazing. Well, I'm here to tell you, let me just start digging the hook into my thigh. I'm here to tell you that Christopher Priest, I'm starting to think he's not only a good writer, he's not a good writer anymore. I'm starting to think there's something really wrong with him. And I know you're missing out on me talking about this regularly because I refuse to read any more of his Vampirella. But this entire comic is just about how much he hates women. Think about that. Think about this author who has been in the industry for so long. He sells books. People like him. Structurally, he does interesting things. He's got interesting ideas. Why do so many of his runs come down to just how deeply his misogyny runs? And I normally don't talk about creators on a personal level because I don't know them. But at the point that every one of his books for years is about him punching down as hard as he can onto every woman who's in the book. She's a shrew. She's a harpy. The only women that are good in Christopher Priest books are dead women. And that's what absolutely this book is. We follow his stupid Agent Everett that was from his original Black Panther run, because actually this is an Agent Everett book, whatever the fuck his name is, not a Black Panther book. And we basically just follow him through a day in Washington, D.C., where his wife, who's the twin sister of his ex-wife who died. So I guess it's just his he's a widower. She's not his ex. And it's about how this woman is awful. And now the woman is so awful that we're supposed to cheer when like at the top of the Washington Monument falls on her. But also it's like tee funny because she was actually pregnant because he still was sleeping with her. Because I guess that's what women are for, huh, Christopher Priest? And so then there's a baby who T'Challa adopts. And that's why there's going to be a white Black Panther, because he adopts the baby of his former agent handler from the FBI. This is the most masturbatory bullshit. And I guess if you hate women this much, you must just sit at home and masturbate all the time, because there's nothing that you would have or want from a woman in real life if this is the way you think about them. I'll be dropping that book. Sunk Cost Fallacy. Mothra, Queen of Monsters, I don't read. Murder Podcast, I thought about, and I might have even briefly looked for, but I didn't wind up reading it. So yeah. Next we come to New Avengers. So look, I'm going to try to say some positive things here about this issue because I had fun. And fun counts for a lot. The thing is that Sam Humphries, and I've noticed this, I've been reading Sam Humphries comics books for like a solid 11 or 12 years now. He does this thing where he has this really cool idea, and then he like gets really deep into trying to write the like funny or kooky or creepy or silly part of it. And it just feels like everything falls apart in that moment. So he's got this great idea here where Bucky and Black Widow encounter that the Jackal has the DNA of the original Illuminati, and he's made corrupted clones of them that are totally off their rockers, and they've got to fight these clones. And Clea shows up. Clea, I don't know, just looking absolutely gorgeous. I love these splash pages from Tom Lima, colored by Rain Barreto. Tom Lima, I was not familiar with their game, and their art on this series has been spectacular. But then sometimes it just feels like it really has to like take a moment to be funny, and a lot of the funniness comes from the clone of Doctor Strange, which I guess is because Clea is here. We're trying to like really show like, oh haha, this clone of Doctor Strange is corrupted, and the line just falls so flat. He's like, sucks to suck, baby, we're blowing this joint, adios muchachos. Like, he's just so silly. And I find whenever Sam Humphries tries to be silly, my brain just shuts off, like the light bulb went out. Like there is no totally empty tumbleweeds anytime Sam Humphries tries to be funny. And I've had this experience with him for 12 years. I do think he is funny, and he sets up situational funniness, but anytime he like tries to write like kooky character dialogue, it's just always falling flat for me. And again, maybe that's a me thing. Maybe the idea of a corrupted asshole clone of Doctor Strange yelling sucks to suck, baby, is actually funny to you, in which case you will like this. But I think even if you stripped away the maybe 4 pages I had to skim through because the dialogue was funny and I couldn't deal with it, this is actually an interesting concept for a book. The idea that we've got to chase down the Illuminati, who are very much involved with the title of what New Avengers is. So great use of the New Avengers title on this book. And that Bucky has this unlikely, very Defenders-esque team that he assembles because he doesn't want the real Illuminati to know that there's a bad version of them, because he doesn't want them to get any bad ideas. That's funny. That's really, really funny. Like, I think that's a very, very clever idea. And you don't have to put as many sucks to suck, baby dialogue balloons in there, because the whole idea is funny. Okay. Yeah, I just saw Logan Wade that Priest is going to be writing Red Sonja. I saw the solicit for the new Red Sonja. I was like, ooh, Red Sonja. I love jumping on the beginning. And then I was like, oh God, Christopher Priest is going to write it. No. Nope. Okay. Yeah, I really, and again, I think that Sam Humphries was trying to really make Laura Kinney funny, and that never works. Laura Kinney's funniness comes from how stoic she is around other characters who are being funny. So again, I think just like trying to write into the humor of these, just let the story breathe, Sam Humphries. You've got a great story. Just let it breathe. Okay. Now we come to improbably my favorite Marvel book of the week, The New Champions. I don't know if that's a dig at how bad Marvel was this week, or if I've just really come around to Steve Fox. Unfortunately, there's only one more issue of this comic book coming. It's drawn by Rory Coleman, inked by a whole team of people, colored by Arthur Hesley, who I really enjoy, and lettered by Travis Lanham. What was really great about this is I do think that Steve Fox, it took him some time, but he found a way, and it's something not all writers are good at, where he is a guest star in every issue, but he uses the guest star to help us fall in love with his cast more. I had so much shit to talk on this cast when this book first started, where I was like, who cares? We're never going to see them again. They're all knockoff. Where's the other champions? But like, I genuinely like them now. I think the first few issues weren't super strong, but we're like on the third issue in a row now that this team is really making sense, and we're just getting little pieces of all their personalities, and they go basically into this night market with this like teenage vampire who speaks in this ridiculous accent, and like it just made me love them. And so they're in one of these night markets where like you've got to trade like your one happy day in order to get like a BLT. And so basically he's like, don't, and he's got the super accent. He's like, don't betray them nothing or whatever. I don't know what accent it is. And it's like, it's cute. And all of the characters react to him, and he kind of is like flirting with all of them because he's a vampire. And they're all like, was he just flirting with me? I think he was flirting with you. That's funny. Like that's a funny beat to play with these teenage heroes. We get to see who their characters are. This is the right scope of problem for them. They're not trying to save the whole world or anything. They're like just trying to like find their friend who got lost in this night market. It's cute. I just think it's really, really cute. And so like, I don't think this is the best book ever, but I think if you have a taste for these books that are kind of just about newer characters finding their footing, and you like things like Strange Academy, in some, I think we're going to get to the final issue of this book, and it's going to have been a good book. I read The New Gods. I did. Here's the thing that I'm willing to say, Bunkmaster B, if you're still on the stream. I just don't care about The New Gods, and I don't have the background with the Fourth World, so I am willing to admit that this one probably is just going over my head because I don't really know these characters that well, and the book certainly isn't doing a big heavy lift to define them very well. And so like I'm getting these moments that are probably super meaningful, and you know what, I can appreciate that. I know people read an X-Men comics sometimes, which I find super meaningful, and other people don't. I will say that I was so fascinated with Evan Cagle's art earlier in the series. It really feels like he's struggling to keep up on some of these pages. We'll get some pages like this with the center panel that's super, super detailed, and then we'll get a page that has like no backgrounds. And you know what? No sweat, man. It is hard to draw a monthly comic, even if you've got a guest artist on 3 pages every issue. So like not everything has to be detailed, but I just wish we could find a happier medium where there was a consistent level of detail and we weren't going like hyper detailed and not hyper detailed. But all this issue really is like the New Gods having a Thanksgiving dinner, which again, because I don't have a history of these characters, did not resonate for me at all. The B plot of Mr. Terrific and Miss Martian on a mission to figure out like where are the other people that landed on Earth from New Genesis. I love that. But as we've established, I love Mr. Terrific and I love Miss Martian. So like that's really great. And I love how Cagle draws it. But this is a great example of like, where are we? Like, what is this space? All we see some people collapsed on the ground or like this brief exterior of a building. It really does feel like Cagle is like skimping on some of the exteriors. Now we come to Nightwing. And I do really like the things that Dan Waters is doing here with Dexter Stoy, with Veronica Gandini on colors and Wes Abbott on letters. But this is another one of those tropes that I don't always like, that I'm going to try to explain to you in case you like it. I do not like a trope where there's one issue where we view the world of the hero through a silly lens, like a silly character has evolved, like Mr. Mixplick or like Batmite or whatever. And so we're seeing a whole silliness angle of that book. Here, Nightwing goes into the Titan's Tower that's been corrupted by a corrupted version of his Nightmite, which is his version of Batmite. And so he's got to fight all these copies of himself. And like then he goes through over a valley of the sketch archers, which is when he was first sketching his first Robin costume, but they've been brought to life here. It lets Dexter Story really show off on art. But for me, I did go into skimming mode at a point here because none of this this is not a story. This is just gags. It's just gags about silly things. He meets a tough Superman version of Nightwing. He meet the warrior version of Nightwing. It's just, there's just no there for me. And that's fine. And you might love that kind of an issue, which is why I'm not here saying garbage. I just know that for me, this was never going to hit because that kind of issue never hits for me. But it's still an interesting run. Going back one, Jean Remy is saying, I loved New Gods. It's one of my favorite reads of that week. Boy, do I pity those who aren't familiar with the Fourth World, such as me, because this book relies so much on previous context. It's probably a nightmare. Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, and I think I'm self-aware enough to know the difference between a book that's just terrible, like Ram V's Resurrection Man, and a book that is just not for me because I'm not invested in the characters, which I think is what's happening for me on this New Gods book. Okay, let's continue past Nightwing to Past Time, which I don't read. It's a book about baseball and serial killers. The first issue just didn't grab me. To Phantom Road. I really was trying to give this Jeff Lemire book a chance because I love Gabriel Edge Walton. I think Lemire does some of his best work with him. I like Jordi Belaire's colors, letters from Steve Wands. This took me literally, because I time all of my reading. I put a little X in the box when I start, and then I put another X when I finish, and my spreadsheet calculates the reading time. This took me 1 minute and 47 seconds to read. because there's nothing here. In fact, plot-wise, it's all things we knew already. We knew this guy kidnapped this little girl in the past who turns out to be our FBI agent in the current day. We knew that he brought her to her father, and we knew that her father got stuck in the Phantom Road so that there was like a problem with the exchange of this glowing green thing for her as a hostage. Like, we've been told all this information already, and I'm not saying that there's no value in a book that expounds on the thing that we had already flashed back to, but the thing is, this didn't expound on anything. So basically you're like, yep, there's that thing. Okay, I knew that. Yeah, oh, here. Oh, wow, it's been 22 pages. I guess I'm done here in 1 minute and 47 seconds. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. But nothing Jeff Lemire ever does is good enough for me, is a sentence I would sometimes say, except for after we pass by Pin Apocalypse, which I wish was digital because I just want to know what it's about. And Post Malone's Big Rig, God help us all. But if you read it, definitely put a comment in so I know. Oh, we're not quite there yet. But in just a moment, we're going to get to Robin and Batman. We're going to find that I do have the ability to like a Jeff Lemire comic book occasionally. This is the last issue of Predator versus Spider-Man. And I loved this. I loved everything about it. I think Benjamin Percy did a great job writing it. I think he's better at lighter-hearted characters. I don't think he's good at Ghost Rider or Wolverine. He's funny on Spider-Man. He's good on Deadpool. Why has he become their grimdark guy? Art from Marcelo Ferreira, inks from Jay Leishton, colors from Frank Dermata, and letters from Clayton Cowles. The one thing I could say in objection to this is that it feels like the only true Spider-Man versus Predator we got was last issue. Like, it was a really cool Spider-Man versus Predator fight, but I kind of thought there was going to be more of that here. This really kind of turns into a Predator versus Predator issue and also a Kraven versus Predator issue. That said, it's really good. I mean, Frank Dermata's colors are so cool. I love the green blood of the Predator, the pink of the sunset sunrise sky, the orange of Kraven. It looks like it should be a mess, but somehow it's very, very compelling. And I love, once again, through this whole series, I've really liked all of Marcelo Ferreira's paneling. I think he just made really, really interesting decisions that added to the storytelling and weren't just paneling to panel. I think this was and it really had me scared because this is not in mainline continuity, that like Benjamin Percy had done some violence to some characters that we really, really liked. The relief of Mary Jane seeing Spider-Man at the end here, this whole thing worked for me. If anything, I just wish that either had one more issue so we could have seen more of Spider-Man versus the Predators because it was so cool and it was drawn so well. Or I just wish that this was double-sized so we could have seen some more Spider-Man versus the Predators, because honestly, this was a lot of fun. And it's a book, if anybody asked me like, oh, are any of those Predators and superheroes books any good? Like, are they fun? I will point to this one because I genuinely had a lot of fun. James Abel saying, I wanted more of this popcorn movie fun. It should have been a 6-issue series. Jamie C47 saying, I love this book. Maybe could have been extended to a 5th. Love the gory art. I like Kraven. Yeah, the conclusion of Kraven, very, very cool. Just not enough Spidey versus Predator. So we're united. We stand together in our review of this, which is that it was pretty damn good, and it just could have used a little bit more, just a little bit more. Jamie C saying, I really promise I'm not somehow reading my notes in the books. I can't believe I've done it again. Ryan Wilson actually was saying I should, as part of my Patreon, just give my full unadulterated notes. Here's two things. One, if you think the things I said about Christopher Priest were mean on air today, I'm sometimes working through my feelings in my notes, and you don't want to hear, like, I've said some mean things that I would not want somebody to be able to screenshot and hand to the creators. So if I put my full notes online, I would have to like clean them up a little bit because they're just not, they're me capturing my emotions at that point that I'm done reading the book, and they're not my review. This tends to be my review. So there's that aspect. And there's also like, how do you organize that? Like, what would I just put a big dump of them on Patreon every week? But it did make me think that would be a good reason to link a Discord to my Patreon, because if you were into that kind of thing, you could just go to the Patreon and there would just be a channel that was like Krisis's notes, and you could just scroll and read everything in the order that I'm reading it. I don't know. I mean, there's new things coming to the Patreon and to Life. Life always has new things coming. But I'm interested in exposing some of it to you, but I could just never show you all the notes because one person would start screenshotting them, put them on Twitter, and then somebody would cancel me. They're my private notes. Private. They're all very private. Okay. I don't read Prodigal Son from Thunder Comics. Rebel Moon. I don't have a problem with Zack Snyder. I love Zack Snyder's Watchmen. I think I liked the Justice League movie just fine. I truly don't and Batman Superman is fine. I don't dislike him. I could not watch Rebel Moon. It wasn't just the sexual violence aspect of it, which always turns me off when we just throw it in just to make our universe seem scarier. It just was unwatchable. Like, there was no, I always got, whenever something I have trouble getting through it, I always come back to Queen. It's got no feel. It's got no rhythm. That I often feel that way about when I'm just like this. There's words here. There's characters talking, but there's no. So the idea of reading a book that would tell me more about the Rebel Moon universe. Unfortunately, this is the first Titans comic I have to skip. But I considered it. I was like, maybe maybe the prequel story will be good. And then I saw there in the creator names, Gail Simone. I said, no, I can skip it. I can skip that. Okay, I don't read Red Before Black. It's. I feel like there's been a lot of time in between issues, but it's kind of like about this lady, but she was out of prison, but she's an agent. I don't know. I forgot. It wasn't very good. Now we come to Red Sonja Noir, and this was very nearly my indie book of the week. And I just want to highlight this cosplay cover. This is really cool, and I really love when the cosplay models get some credit. This is Molly Stewart. Her Instagram is "This Redhead is SFW, safe for work." So this redhead is SFW. Just really, really cool cosplay, enough so that I put it on the thumbnail, but it was my head on top of her head. I really am a big, big fan of David Avallone, who writes a lot of these Dynamite books. He's written some better than good, spectacular Elvira. I think he writes a very, very good Red Sonja. First of all, I was surprised to find that the interior of this was in color, because it's called Red Sonja Noir. There's nothing really noir about it. It's a little bit of a detective story. It's a little bit of a double cross. It's got a little bit of a pulpy romance to it, but I just don't understand why it was called noir. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I don't know. But this art, holy shit. Edu Mena, colored by Adriano Augusto. The art is incredible. There's a couple places where like two characters are talking to each other and it gets a little bit like, not like boxy, but just like a little bit vacant. This is a trope that I really love in art, when there's a single character and they're not necessarily moving, but we panel out different parts of them to represent the passage of time instead of just putting all of the word balloons in one place. I love it. It's a one-shot story. It's a one and done. If you've just wanted to read a one and done Red Sonja story that is heavy with the TNA and the cheesecake and the sapphic, it's here. But actually, I just liked it as a Red Sonja story. She has a partner briefly, and the whole kind of pitch that David Avallone, by the way, lettered by Jeff Eckelberry, who letters a lot of Dynamite. The pitch that David Avallone makes is basically like, you've never heard a story of Red Sonja having a partner she trusts. Maybe this is why. And so then the whole book is like, why does it not work for her to have a partner? And then she partners in some other ways with this woman who's very, very suspicious. And the art, it's good. The whole thing is good. And like, again, I'm not pro or con cheesecake. I don't need cheesecake, but I don't think cheesecake is instantly bad either. But like, if you're going to tell a good story and the art's going to be this good and the colors is going to be this good, yeah, let's look at some human bodies. Let's go. So yeah, I think if you have not read a Red Sonja book and you don't mind a little bit of cheesecakey action to your Red Sonja book, and you just want to get a little bit of a flavor of like what Red Sonja could be, I really think that this was a lot of fun. The cover has nothing to do with what the inside looks. But this art is spectacular. You know what the inside looks like? It looks like the cover of a Zenoscope book. Like I'd have to, maybe Edu Mena does some Zenoscope covers. This is like a whole interior that's to the quality of a Zenoscope book. James Abel decided to give this a try. Well, this isn't new Red Sonja. It's like a one shot, because the new will be Christopher Priest, and we can't give that a try. And I enjoyed the art. The story was weak. The love interest feels like it was put on there just to help sell the book. Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like, oh, lesbian action, buy it. But I actually kind of like the story. To me, this is like that perfect zone for Red Sonja and Conan. We know that the stories are going to be repetitive. We know it's the same story every time. That's the magic. It is the same story every time. Yeah. Okay. Super Dot, my head still explodes when I remember Wendy Pini of ElfQuest fame, one of the creators of ElfQuest, was the first official Red Sonja cosplayer. A piece of trivia I did not know. I don't read Red Sonja versus the Army of Darkness, although it's one of the 10 million books that Tim Seeley writes every month, just because I'm not a huge Army of Darkness fan. I was going to catch up on Redcoat this week because I was like, so many other things have been bad. Why not just catch up on all the books that were bad? But I actually wind up catching up on 2 other books that I'd been meaning to catch up on, and then I wound up liking them, and I saved them to the end because I was like, catch-ups I put at the end just because that way I don't like make the stream late by not catching up. And after liking those 2 books, I'm like, well, let's not chase good with bad. Let's not start reading Redcoat. So I am going to catch up and try some of Redcoat. But I'm probably going to read the whole first trade, but I don't like it. I love the art. I didn't really like the story, but that's par for the course with me and Jeff Jones. But I didn't catch up because I caught up on other things. I didn't read Speak Without Words, The Revolution of Cassandra, chapter 3 of 4. Okay, so last time around, you heard me really slag off this Robin and Batman Jason Todd book by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, because it felt like there was no story. It was just Lemire writing Jason Todd as this like murder child. And I felt like Dustin Nguyen's art was too loose. Like the character models were so loose in the line work, and the watercolor is gorgeous, but I just felt like I was kind of lost in the mix. It's lettered by Steve Wands, by the way. This fixed all that. I don't know if maybe I just needed to get the first issue under my belt, or maybe the first issue was not as tight as the second issue, which is like not actually often the case. Usually the first issue is tighter. But I just, first of all, this page doing a 12 panel grid in watercolor and with such kind of impressionistic images, but for me to totally know everything that they're looking at and implying in every one, I loved it. It was like gripping to me right away. And the lettering, like the yellow on red Robin lettering, which is like bold and contrasty, but still really readable. Then the fight with Batman here, again, I felt it was just like really, really tight compared to the first issue. And I think it worked that Dustin Nguyen mostly put Batman's face in a little bit of shadow, and then he had this masked character fighting him, because like, I don't think he is the best at line work in the middle of an action scene like this. And we shouldn't be distracted like that. And then, although Alfred's face a little strange looking here, we get this moment where Batman and Alfred are like debating, is Jason Todd just too broken as a Robin? Some of the dialogue felt a little unnatural coming out of Alfred's mouth, but I really do wish we could go back and tell a whole 100 issues of like the 5 weeks that Jason Todd was Robin to Batman. I think it's a really interesting period. And even though some of it felt a little out of character, and I loved Bruce saying here, no, I refuse to accept that. I'm not giving up on him. We can fix him. And then like Alfred kind of being like, you're trying to fix him because you're trying to fix something about himself. He never says that, but you can just feel it in the unspoken words here, because what are we reading? We're reading a Jeff Lemire comic book, which means it's about sad dads who once were rad dads, but they're not going to be bad dads, but they need some time to finish being sad dads. And that's what a Jeff Lemire comic is. But I think applying that frame to Jason Todd as Robin actually really, really works for me. And then we get this amazing heartfelt conversation between Jason Todd and Dick Grayson, one of the first times they're ever together. And here, Jason Todd's face is really on model. My problem in the first issue is that it felt like his face was a different shape every time. Here, Dustin Nguyen keeps it really consistent. He's got this really cute little scoopy nose. He has this little kind of like chin pudge that comes out no matter what angle and he's got a little bit of baby fat in his cheeks, and it's consistent across all the panels. So I never felt like I felt out of appreciating it the way that I did in the first one. Now I was going to drop this. I'm so happy that I read it. Now I'm kind of into it again. And I might go back and read their first Robin and Batman, even though I usually don't think of them as something I'd really love. I just love this cover of Space Ghost Johnny Quest Space Quest. I mean, what a great cover. What a really fun pop art cover. Okay. I am seriously debating if this issue of Spawn 366 is going to be my last issue, not just of the main Spawn title, but of all the Spawn universe, because it was that bad. And I might just have to read some of my notes to you. So here you go. Here's what it really looks like behind the scenes. Nice art, but this story is total nonsense and the writing is embarrassing. Half the issue is just spending time explaining why last issue's cliffhanger was a lie and Spawn is actually fine. We just hand wave away the giant elephant guy who just got introduced. Then we set up this huge plan that is lure the big guy close and knock him over. But it's written as if we're building a nuclear bomb. I'm embarrassed that this is a comic book. I'm embarrassed for the entire medium. I just think Todd McFarlane, for Brett Booth, great job. Great art. Loved it. Great colors from Robert Nugent. Tom Orzechowski's lettering is fine. I think we need to accept that Todd McFarlane's not a writer. And I don't think he's a plotter either. And this was set up for so much success. This whole Hell Hath Arisen, the dead zones being opened up. There was quality we could have had here. And to find out that this grand finale of this big buildup, not of just this 4-issue arc, but of like 2 years of the Hell Zones being done, is basically Spawn, who last issue had teleported into the heart of this giant creature, being like, shh, I teleported out. Like that's just rubber banding. That's just, you just bait and switched us to have a cliffhanger, and it had no real story value. And then literally what happens is like Nyx inhabits a dead body to talk to him, and Spawn decapitates the dead body. Who cares? And then they knock this big giant thing over and he falls on a spike and it dies. That was your story? We needed all of these guest appearances of all of these characters, all this buildup. We started out this whole arc looking in on God in heaven, like it was going to be that important. And the end of the story is we tip over the giant and he falls on a sharp thing. Quinn Cognito says, I can't believe Saw 366 is literally ignoring an elephant in the room. Oh, Quinn Cognito. Now we come to Spider-Girl. I don't understand why this exists. It's written by Turin Grauenbeck. The problem is partially Turin Grauenbeck, but it's partially the art from Andre Risso and Hava Tartaglia as the color artist, lettered by Joe Caramagna. This book has no distinct look to it. And like you're advertising with a cover by DNA, who's got these super poppy, very vibrant covers that if you had put it on a Spider-Boy comic would have made sense because the Spider-Boy comic was very vibrant. I don't think this book knows what it is. It's kind of a little bit cartoony and the faces that these characters are pulling and the kind of like triangle quality of her face. But then when we get to the fights, like this was the one good page and clearly this artist is good at drawing these kind of like very like sexy characters boobing their way onto page. But then we have the Spider-Girl outfit, which would be inappropriate to be boobily because she's like 11 years old, but she's just in this like weird baggy costume that I don't think he's actually very good at drawing. And then the color look, it doesn't like, it's not like a bold, flashy book. Is it cartoony? Some of the colors are vibrant. Some of them are dark. It feels like you can't decide, is it a noir book? Is it a scary book? Is it a kid book? It just feels like tonally it's all over the place. And like Spider-Girl is an interesting character. And I actually really like Lady Bullseye. She's not Lady Bullseye here. She's just this character that Turin Grauenbeck randomly made up and is using Lady Bullseye in the place of. But I just got to the end of this and I was like, who is it for? Why are we reading this? It doesn't feel like this pitch really needed to exist. It doesn't feel like this comic book understands like what tonally is happening. It really feels like it doesn't know what it is. James Abel saying, I did enjoy Spider-Girl's line, why would a laundromat owe you money? Fun issue, but not great. Yeah, I didn't even have fun. Okay, I decided that my week was going so badly that why not just read a Star Trek comic? Why not just read a Star Trek comic? Now, it helps that it's written by Christopher Cantwell, who I genuinely do enjoy, although he's a strange man sometimes in writing. Drawn by Megan Levins, colors from Charlie Kirchhoff, letters by my Blue Sky friend, Jody Troutman. I love the concept of this, that the red shirts in Star Trek are the security team and like they all die and we know that's all the joke, but like they kind of know it too. They're like, we're the front lines and we're probably going to get cut down. There's like a very Starship Troopers quality to that. And so this book basically has this one red shirt that's down on a planet and it has this one very buttoned up commander of red shirts that's like, we're going down and you're here because I want you to. And clearly we're going to like mow down these characters. Totally on its side there. Where it lost me is that it starts mowing them down in ways that the action didn't really track. And it's been so much time building them up that clearly we're supposed to like have some fun because it gives these long bios for everyone and like introduces them all. And there's this long cast page. Like I really love the whole aesthetic because you know, in a book called Red Shirts, they're all going to die. So like the joke is like built in at the top of the book that like we're taking this so much care in introducing these characters to you who we're absolutely going to slaughter, right? It's like battle royale, you know? So, but then to have that be the funny thing and the way that they kill off two of them here, it's just in this page that like, I could not make heads or tails of it. And I don't think that Megan Levens drew it badly. I just think that Christopher Cantwell like wrote a hard to decipher thing, which they were being like shot down to the planet in torpedo tubes, but some of the torpedo tubes could be steered from the inside, but then there were actual torpedoes too. And it all happens in the course of one page and then it's over. And I was like, okay. So I'm into the concept of this. I do think it could be really fun. I think there's something very, very funny about the way that it's pitched and the idea that we're here to see them all die. But this issue itself just didn't quite work for me because that fun thing that we were here to do, it kind of like wasn't at its best when it was doing that thing. Speaking about books that are not its best, here's Star Wars, issue number 3, written, unfortunately, by Alex Segura, drawn lovingly by Paul Noto, letters from Clayton Cowles. So if you've got to invent a new Star Wars character from scratch that you're then going to kill in this issue, and so in order to make us feel the resonance of him in the issue, you insert all of the flashbacks that would inform us about him into the issue. It's like, I get there's something to be said for a flashback issue, but it's almost like the Gora kept... You know when you're a kid and you're playing with toys and maybe you're playing with like somebody else and you're like having them fight and one of them's like, He-Man destroys your Ninja Turtles because it turns out how He-Man has laser eyes. And you're like, oh yeah, well our turtle shells reflect the laser eyes. And you know that like feeling of like having to come up with something on the spot and then like insert it into the story so that it makes sense. That's what these flashbacks felt like. The present day stuff of Han Solo talking to the guy from the Ethan Sachs Bounty Hunters comic, whose name I never can remember. Yeah, I don't remember. I loved that part. That part was great. Everything about it worked. Their chase of this, all the artwork, all the story work. It just felt the need to like keep cutting away to this flashback over and over again to give us more context. I actually thought it would have been more effective to just have them meet this guy, tell us he was somebody from their past, not flashback at all, and then do the whole flashback after. Like that to me would have been more interesting. So it wasn't actually terrible, but the structure of it, I just really, really had a problem with. Cedric and Ellen says that Star Trek, not Wars comic was the first I've bought since John Byrne wrote and drew them. And I love Megan Lemon's art since I read Madame Frankenstein. Well, did you have that same lack of clarity as I did when they all died? Because I really got lost. Okay. I can't even talk about this one anymore. It was terrible. I hated it. I don't understand what was supposed to be funny about the Bad Batch. I never could tell them apart. The story was boring. I just can't talk about it again. I'm sorry. This is the final issue of Star Wars, The High Republic Avengers. And look, this was a 20-issue kids run. I think they absolutely earned their victory lap here, written by Danielle Jose Older, drawn by the man that I love, Harvey Talabal, colored by Michael Etienne, and letters from Tyler Smith with Jimmy Bencourt. There just wasn't much to it. I just think in a book that's always put 200 characters on every page without ever giving us like a caption box or any kind of chyron and who they are or whatever, to kind of be like, the war is over and now we're all happy. And it did this thing where it like gave them, so many of them, a little flash forward to like something that would make them happy in the future to give us some resolve. But I'm like, y'all, this is not a comic I had an easy time following ever. I don't know if that was the way to go, but I just love Harvey Talabal's art so much. It's so cool. So like this, I mean, this page, there was so many great art. And then, you know what? We end with a lesbian wedding. If you're going to end your Star Wars book with a gay wedding, I'm at least going to medium like your Star Wars book. Whatever Harvey Talabal is going to draw next, I'm going to be reading it because his art just absolutely fascinates me. And I just think this was the little book that could. This was better than everything else. So much better than everything else from Marvel's main High Republic adventure, or High Republic, because Adventures is always a kid comic. This was better than all of it front to back. Okay, here's Superman Unlimited, written by Dan Slott. Now, this continues to be one of the ugliest comic books I've seen in my life, as drawn by Raphael Albuquerque and colored by Marcel Neo. But, Dan Slott hits on a thing that he's actually talented at. First of all, look at Clark's face down here. That doesn't even look like a face. What is happening? Anyway, Slott is good at funny stuff. He's good at lighthearted stuff. He's good at pets. He's good at kid characters. This is the book he should be writing. He should be writing the Clark as Superboy book. He should be writing John Kent. A John Kent book by Dan Slott, that would kill. It would be great. A crypto book by Dan Slott, that would kill. I just don't. This was genuinely charming. Ugly, except the dog. They drew the dog well, but this was a genuinely charming book. John Kent takes the dog, or I think it was John Kent at this point, takes the dog for a walk, but the dog flies all around the world and he's apologizing in all these different languages. That's cute. Pardon me. That's funny. Dan Slott is good at this. I don't understand why we're trying to do big drama that's never been his strong point. So I begrudgingly thought the script was okay. Still the ugliest book at DC. Seems like a forced crossover to tie into the Superman movie, says Jane Zabel, with Crypto the Superdog. Something was off about this issue. The ending was good. Was the thing that was off that it was good and the first two issues were bad? That's what was off. It was about me. All right, Jason Aaron's time on Ninja Turtles is almost over. He's going to be transitioning off the title with issue number 12. So it kind of feels like we've done all this buildup that felt like it was the gateway to a much bigger turtle world that he was going to build up to. And all of a sudden, it's just about done. So here we see the Turtles on trial as drawn by regular artist Juan Ferreira, lettered by Sean Lee, and designed by Nathan Lewittick. Once again, I mean, there have been a lot of amazing artists on IDW's Ninja Turtles. Dave Watchter drew it for a while. I love his art. This is some extreme extraordinary. I don't know if the Turtles have ever looked this good before. And we finally get them coming together, but then they come together and they're stuck in a courtroom. And it's kind of like a funny thing to play. I just don't know if it's worth like a whole issue, like the beat of like, okay, the turtles should not be representing themselves in court. That kind of feels like a 1-page gag or a 2-page gag. It kind of turned into a 12-page gag, but I do appreciate that their incompetence kind of doesn't even matter because the person who's against them, this Mayor Hale, has some kind of like Purple Man quality that he can convince people to do his bidding. So it's almost like playing the beat that like, okay, yes, it's funny that the Turtles are messing this up, but it wouldn't even matter if they were messing it up or not because the deck is stacked against them. It's gorgeous. It's so much fun to read. It's maybe not as great as all of the issues that came before, but I still just love this Ninja Turtle book. I don't read They Choose Violence from AWA because they put me off by using generative AI in their titles, and I'm briefly boycotting them as a result. I don't read Thundercats number 16 because it's written by Declan Shalvey, and I use written in quote marks there. I did read The Tin Can Society, which is back after a several months break, and it just felt like maybe they should have sat down and like banked all of these issues first because it really feels like this issue is just rushing. There was nothing to it. This took me 2 minutes to read. It's written by Peter Warren. It's drawn beautifully from Francesco Mobley, colored by Chris Chuckry, lettered by Jackie Marzan. But after the big cliffhanger and the thing that we found out last issue, nothing happens. They basically are like, you're back, to the person that we found out is back. And then the evil villain lady is like, I'm a villain. And then we just get a lot of pages that only have 1 or 2 panels, and then it ends. It doesn't really, like, there's no story really. It's just splash pages. So, I mean, this book, I think, fell entirely out of my top 20 from being in the top 10. If you're not going to write a good story, I'm not going to pretend your comic book is good. James Abel saying the Clone Wars have begun. The truth is finally out. The series can begin its final arc. I don't think we began shit. Okay, now we get to Titans. I actually really love this. Okay, I was so happy when I got to this issue because I feel like I spent a lot of time critiquing what goes wrong in a finale of a story, like that Spawn story, right? That like all this build up and the finale was kind of like saying that things we saw already were not really what we saw in a way that just totally controverts our opinions of the arc, and then being like, and then he fell over. It doesn't feel significant, right? This Titans issue by John Layman, drawn and colored by Pete Woods, letters from Wes Abbott. This was a satisfying ending because we have Beast Boy narrating it, that basically they had already figured out how they were going to take this fight with Deathstroke, but it doesn't subvert anything we understood already. If anything, the Titans catch up to what we understood already, which is a satisfying way to do it. Because as the reader, we're like, finally. Now, I have criticized this book for using a little bit of the trope, an idiot plot. An idiot plot means all the characters have to act stupid in order for the plot to work. But here, the fact that they were figuring it out all along, and they did have plans, and they did draw conclusions, to me means that this actually was reading better than I was giving it credit for, and it's probably going to read well in trade because it ends in a satisfying way. The fight feels big. It doesn't have any rubber bandy stuff. A lot of people, when we get to this big fight at the end of an arc, it's kind of like they realize they've already had those 2 characters fight or punch or come to blows, or they've already knocked that character down, and they're like, well, I got to do it again because it's the ending. None of the thing about this fight feels repetitive. It feels like these are all new beats that are not just bouncing back and forth. So we get a plot that makes sense. We get the Titans get information that we've already had that is satisfying to watch them get. And then it ends in a really interesting place where they get a victory and the victory feels earned. This is how you end a story arc with a fight. This is how to do it satisfyingly. Was it the best comic book ever? No, it was a little decompressed, but Pete Webb's art was really, really good. And I just felt like I got satisfying story, not only for the Titans, but for each of the villains that were against them as well. So like, I'm not like I'm impossible to please. And even this week where I hated most comic books, if you structure your book well, you can do well. John Layman is really good at this. I don't know why he's not allowed to write anything interesting when he writes in the Spawn universe, but honestly, I kind of like to see him write X-Men with this verve. Okay, I don't read Toxie Team Up, but I am reading the main Toxic Avenger, and I think it's hilarious that it's Toxic Avenger and the Jersey Devil. Something about that just tickles me. Okay, I keep saying that I want to catch up on the Trident of Aurelia, but it's from Battle Quest Comics, who don't do digital comics. But I have gotten in touch with them in the past, and they have given me comp copies in the past. So I did get in touch with them a little while ago to ask if this would be a book I could read. And they gave me a whole advanced reader copy of the trade paperback of the first series, because this is a sequel series. I only had time to read the first issue. But y'all, if this issue, which was from the original series in 2023, so again, the current one is a sequel. It's the Trident of Aurelia Corazon, 3 of 4 is the sequel. This is the original that I read. This was the best book that I read this week. The art was impeccable. The story was great. The world building was incredible. So this girl lives on this island that used to be the island of like where all the ambassadors were for this kingdom. But something goes really bad on the island, and this evil sect takes it over, and they basically drive out or assassinate all the ambassadors. But her dad was one of the ambassadors, and her mom has been dead since she was born. She's never known her. And so her dad, they like won't kill him right away because he isn't a current ambassador, but they like hate him, and they finally find a reason to kill him. So they're like, when you turn 18, you're going to become the bride of like our evil thing that we worship. And she's like, no. And they bring her to be the bride. And then spoilers, but it's the first issue and it's the whole concept of the series. And this is for you, Kane. I know you're not watching now, but maybe you'll watch it on the replay. They throw her off this cliff to like, basically she's going to like drown and like then be like, her body's going to be taken over by this evil being or whatever. I don't have to explain it to you perfectly, but it turns out that her mom was a mermaid. And as soon as she hits the water, like one of those Barbies that changes color, she turns into a mermaid and she meets all the other mermaids. And she's like, oh, I'm going to fuck them up now. Perfect. It was, I wish I'd saved the credits. I don't know if I could open them up and not cause my computer to explode, but everything about it was great. The art was great, the story was great, the lettering was great. It didn't feel like an indie comic, like derogatory at all. It felt like a cool indie comic. So there's one more issue left of this new series of the Trident of Aurelia. For the next issue, I will finish reading that comp copy of the original series, and because sometimes number 1 issues are good, and then what follows is not good. So I'm not saying this has my like blanket stamp of approval. I'm just saying that first issue was hot. So I'm going to read the full first thing, and if it's great, I will see maybe if I could get issue 1 from Battle Quest Comics of this current series, so I could review that for you too, because temporarily, without having a final determination, just based on that one that I read, this is pretty great. And this is why I go and explore these indie series and try to look for small stuff. Okay, surprise, I read Ultimate Black Panther this week because I was like, things are going so badly. How much worse could it get? And I had been really hating this. So I wound up reading, I think, 5 issues of this to catch up to the present. Look, this has the same problem that this book always has, which is that it's just so decompressed. It's so decompressed. It reads so fast, but I do really like where Brian Hill has taken the story. I was right when I stopped reading this 4 months ago. I told you this is going to read better in a binge because the issues are so fast and the plot developments are so slim in each one of them. But as a hoover it all up in 5 minutes, it's going to be fun. Well, I had a lot of fun. I love what's going on, that the vibranium is possessed, that Storm and T'Challa are kind of one faction, which has left Okoye with Killmonger as the other faction. And it's like they're both starting to have their own romantic connections that are going to break up Black Panther and Aurora. But was that their intent? Are they playing a game to break them up, or is it just happening naturally? And there's just a lot of things happening, and it was really enjoyable to read a trade at a time. Not every comic book reads great as singles, so I think this is a very wait for trade series. And having read 5 in a row, did the decompression annoy me? Absolutely it did, but there were still some good issues in here, and I felt like it was much more substantial reading it in a binge, whereas as individual issues by themselves, it just pissed me off. So since I'd read the Trident of Aurelia, I wound up liking that. I read the Black Panther, I wound up liking that. I read the Robin versus Jason Todd, I like that. I kind of felt like I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take the $100,000 and go. Like I didn't want to take my chances with catching up on Redcoat or catching up on Ultimate X-Men. I was happy and I just left it there. But those were 3 books that I wasn't going to read this week. And because this week was going so badly, I was like, what's the harm? And then it turned out they were good. However, no week will ever be bad enough that I will ever have the lack of self-respect for myself to ever read a Christopher Priest writing Vampirella issue ever again. I really think there's something wrong. I think there's a true problem. Okay. I don't read The Color Walking Dead, but wow, what a great cover that is of issue 117. I don't read Witchblade. That was the other one I was thinking about catching up with, and I was like, we're just gonna stay. We're holding them. No one to hold them, no one to fold them. I didn't read the noir version of Wolverine Revenge because it was bad enough with colors. However, I did read Wonder Woman by Tom King because I caught up on it, and I was like, why not keep reading it? It's a new arc. Daniel Sampere is back, who I do think is one of the best Wonder Woman artists we've had in a decade, and I just wish somebody other than Tom King was reading it. So this did 2 things. One thing I liked, one thing I didn't like. It has Wonder Woman basically in this mode of like, why am I going to agree to your laws and your treaties and your agreements if there's justice to be had? And I love that like Batman and Superman are kind of two opposite forces in that world. Like Batman is kind of like, well, we got to figure out our own way around them. We can't just charge in there. And Superman is like, we got to obey the laws. So like, I love that Wonder Woman's like, or we could just go there and do the right thing. Now, that's a little bit of a twist from Tom King, because there are times that Superman and Batman would just say, we're going to go and do the right thing. But I like rhetorically how he's using the two of them. Then there's this whole sequence on this island that basically are people that left America to be expatriates. And Mouse Man takes over the island, and the only language any of them have is mice have ears, Mouse Man knows, 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 mice have ears, Mouse Man knows. Tom King sometimes thinks he's being funny, and he's not funny, and he winds up spending 8 pages being funny. But I did appreciate the idea that these characters were communicating something to each other with that. But also, of course, he has people beating a woman across the face over and over again, because this whole Tom King book is he misinterpreted the original Wonder Woman comics by Marston as being about women being smacked across the face and abused as the point of Wonder Woman. No, the point is that women could be chained up, but even while they're chained, they still have the power. That's the point of Wonder Woman. So Tom King, I mean, he's a moron. He's a war criminal. He's a terrible writer. We know all these things already. But that said, I just think this is interesting. I think it's interesting to have this island of expatriated Americans who've been taken over by a mouse consciousness. And Wonder Woman is like, we're not going to wait for diplomatic appeals here. I'm going to go free people from their mice overlords. And she goes down to the island, and she's got, for some reason, a baby strapped in her back. Don't even get me started about his whole all women have to be mothers things, especially the strongest female characters. I just don't have the bandwidth to go there this week. But I actually did have a lot of fun in this issue, not because Tom King is funny. Don't get it twisted. Tom King isn't funny. I had fun because I really enjoy this concept. And Super Job nailing it. Marston like the women smacking him. That's the difference, Tom King. Let's have some women smack Tom King. I'm not asking anybody to do anything violent. Rhetorically smack him. I decided that I would read the first issue of this X-Men Age of Revelation because it was by Jed MacKay, and I would at least get a sense of where we were going. Even though I am not reading all 16 of those series, I am going to enjoy a lengthy vacation. And that's not just about X-Men. I do not read alternate reality events while they come out. This, I'll put James's comment up first. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this. It feels like this generation's Days of Future Past. It felt like this generation's it's like I took that juice at the bottom of the garbage and like warmed it up in a pot. And I was like, warm, smells like a garbage candle. The first thing I didn't understand is, why do you get Humberto Ramos to draw this? He's not known for drawing X-Men well. He drew Jeff Lemire's Extraordinary X-Men extraordinarily badly. And he's not in his like new hyper refined mode that we've been seeing him draw Fantastic Four. He's launching Fantastic Four. Give the man a rest. He's not good at X-Men. We don't know him for drawing X-Men. He's not part of the X-Men brand. Then, since the entire issue was told in flashback, it was colored by Edgar Delgado, usually good colorist, all in like this grayscale blue to be like, this is flashback. If the whole thing's in flashback, we don't need to color it separately, assholes. Then I did enjoy that they're in Philadelphia. When I tell you I've seen this view of this head-on view of City Hall at least 3,000 days of my life. I walk down this block every day. It's how I got home from school. It's how I got home from work. It's how I got on the train. Even when I lived on the other side of Philly, that's still the direction I walked in to get on my train to get out of Philadelphia. So I did really delight. I was like, yes, Philadelphia, awesome. Let Philadelphia be the birthplace of mutants. But there was just nothing to this. Like, if you were just going to do this like history of the world, and basically the idea is that Cyclops allowing Doug Ramsey onto the X-Men team was a bad idea, because now that Doug Ramsey has been powered up by Apocalypse, he has the ability to make anybody obey his language. He doesn't just translate language. He translates language into it being your motivation. So basically, him being on the X-Men is the beginning of the end, and there's this mutant plague that starts in Philadelphia, lovingly rendered. And basically, the X-Men actually decide that's like a good thing, and then Cyclops gets deposed, and Doug Ramsey kind of treats Philadelphia as the new home of mutants again. totally in favor of that. But it kind of felt like there was, to tell this whole 10 years of history in this 0 issue, it didn't even pick interesting moments. Like, it felt like we were dancing around the interesting moments, not showing them, and the art was bad, and the colors were bad. It just felt like this, Kieran Gillen could have done this in a data page. I think the way to do this would have to be just show us 1 or 2 intense vignettes of something happening, the way that Hickman did in Powers of X, and then end that intense vignette drawn well. Arguably, that would make a difference. And then at the end of the vignette, do like a data page being like, and in the 4th year of the reign of Revelation, the blah. That I hate to just like play fantasy book, because if you go into a book and you're expecting something that you know the book isn't going to give you, of course you're not going to like the book. And I don't want to make it out like I'm some genius and the X-Men line would be good if I was writing it, but this just wasn't good. The problem was it wasn't good. And I think there were easy ways to make it good. And the thing I'm saying that could have made it good is showing more consequential things happening. And in order to do that, we could have skipped a lot of the, like, we're just standing here narrating over it by just doing that in this great invention that we happen to have in the X-Men line, data pages. But maybe Tom Brevoort said they're not allowed to have data pages anymore. This was terrible. I mean, it was terrible. There's absolutely nothing about this. Even if I leave aside how bad the art was and the colors and the pacing, there's absolutely nothing that I want to know about this future where there's mutants are fractured because everybody listens to Doug Ramsey and Philadelphia is a mutant paradise. You already told me. You already know. I already know everything I need to know about that. It sounds great. The end. Period. I've been really wanting to read The Waifu, and it's just not digital. It's from Devil's Due. So I guess if I knew about the Kickstarter a year ago, I could have maybe. Oh, I guess many of you had comments on X-Men. Let's get in the comments. One Wheelchair X, who's the only opinion that matters about this, as far as I'm concerned, says very much a setup issue. Some interesting ideas. Philadelphia is now the mutant capital. That's right. I hope there's more to it. Doug was more to it with Doug rather than him just being evil. Surprised with Zorn being the Zorn brother from the Austin run and not Zorn from Morrison. James Abel saying, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this. It feels like this generation's Days of Future Past. But to which I would say it felt like this generation's garbage juice. Jamie Seed 47 wants me to read all 16 issues. I would have to raise the prices on my Patreon a lot more to convince me to read all 16. It's not issues, 16 series. I didn't grab the thing at the back, but I had all the logos. I'm like, this makes me crave death. And going back to Wonder Woman, Edwin doesn't understand why she couldn't have just left the baby with somebody. I don't understand. Quincognito decided to give it a shot after skipping from the Ashes almost completely now, and what a mistake. James the Medium answered, this X issue is so disappointing. I don't understand the X Office or Tom Brevoort or whatever. This idea is so creatively bankrupt and weak. I hated this book. I hate how Brevoort used mutants. There was this end note at the end, which is where end notes appear, where Jed McKay was like, it just felt like there was a gun to his head. Like he was like, we know at the end of Krakoa, like, get me demonetized. We know at the end of Krakoa, and he's like blinking in Morse code to be like, save me, please. That some of the characters we love were taken off the board. And then I read The Genius Heir of Apocalypse, and I thought there was more I could do with that. Like it really felt like I was reading a hostage note. So yeah, that's what we've got. One Wheelchair X says also very interesting to find out that Age of Revelation has been planned since before From the Ashes started. Well, the feeling I get, and what I've learned from people who pay more attention to this than me, was that Heir of Apocalypse kind of was already in development as part of the next era of when Jordan D. White was going to be the editor, but they kind of still ran with it to fill in the gap before From the Ashes started. But then because they knew that was going to be the gap filler, McKay was like, okay, what could we steer into a year from now that will make this kind of pay off for significant? I mean, yeah, okay. And in future weeks, when I'm not reading these, I am happy to have One Wheelchair X appear for 2 minutes if he feels like staying up this late and give his reviews. I did read Youngblood Deluxe #4. Now, you've been hearing me really enjoy this Youngblood. I can't even talk anymore. Youngblood Deluxe. But re-scripted by Joe Casey, re-inked by Danny Mickey, recolored by Matt Yackey, re-lettered by Russ Wooten. But the problem is you're still working with a Rob Liefeld comic book. And what's interesting about this issue is it actually combines the plot of the original Youngblood 1992 issues 4 and 5. But Liefeld didn't draw a 5, so he redraws some of it here. And I mean, this looks great. This is Liefeld in peak toyetic Liefeld, being colored really, really well in the modern day by Matt Yackey, who always worked with him. But the wheels just fall off the bus really hard here. And Joe Casey, once again, and we know this about Joe Casey, he rescripts this so hard. He's the hardest rescriptor. He's going to rescript you so much harder than you've ever been rescripted before, that you're going to be like, I don't know if my body can be rescripted any harder than that. I feel like I need a break and some aftercare after all that rescripting. It's a fun comic about like extreme versions of the Avengers. You do less. So thus ends our experiment in Youngblood Deluxe. Now I have to go back to reading my original Youngblood issues. I really think it was good for the first couple of issues, but as Liefeld's story got more and more inane from the original comics, I just think that Joe Casey was doing like too much heavy lifting to like make it seem good. Like just let it be silly and just write the silly version better than the actual version. Okay. But the art was really cool. This modern color on classic Liefeld really looks cool. And then we come to the final issue of our week and of Zatanna. It's issue number 6 of Jamal Campbell's Zatanna. And this is with art and writing and colors from him and letters from Ariana Maher. This really was a tightrope walk for me, because there were points of it that did not make a lot of sense. And it is not because I'm not following this. I've been paying very close attention to this. I do think there were just a couple pages where the story kind of got away from him, and Jamal Campbell, he's not a super experienced writer. And it just felt like he was kind of writing like nonsense just to have his villain's monologue. Really, it just kind of got away from him. But then just that I was like, oh man, like I wish this would do what Titans did and like pay off all the things we knew. Also, it felt there was just like a lot of people on the page. Like Wonder Woman's there, Trigon's there, and I know they've all been set up through the story and they're all Zatanna's allies and it all ties into Justice League Dark, but it kind of just felt like Zatanna wasn't going to be able to resolve her own plot, which I kind of was like, well, that's no fun. But then after like 4 or 5 pages where I was like, oh no, then it kind of really clicked. And from that point forward, it felt like it set up all the balls that had been kind of set up on the table, and it just shot them all into the corner pocket, one after another, and it ended in like a really spectacular and satisfying way. I would love to see Jamal Campbell continue to grow as a scripter. I think he had a really great plot here. I kind of wish he had like a co-writer to just help him a little bit with structure and polish, because I don't know, for as beautiful as this is, if it's going to be as great as it could have been if it was just polished up a little bit more. But it's a very good Zatanna series, and I am sure because of the caliber of the art, it's going to go on to be an evergreen Zatanna series. I just think that in each issue, it just felt there were 3 or 4 pages that just could have been a little better, a little tighter. Cruel Angel saying, Zatanna, sadly, it's over. We got another great Z series 2 years in a row, and that final sign-off, only the beginning. Please mean that Jamal and Z will be returning together. James Abel says, amazing artwork. The story was good. I felt like there were too many characters in this issue. And Renzo saying most plainly, we need more Zatanna. We know we don't need more reviews because we've reached the end. Roger Coleman asking, what time is it in New Zealand? Only it's a sunny 12:45 in the afternoon. And I'm going to probably, I don't know what I'm going to do. Be happy that I don't have to read any more comics that came out this damn week. I'm just going to scroll up very quickly. I think we really mostly got almost all of the interesting things that people said along the way, but I'm just going to look and see if there's anything else. A lot of people bemoaning about Christopher Priest. Y'all had a whole side conversation about IVX, and Lance just saying the Fourth World might be my favorite pocket of the DC universe. Jack Kirby's saga was so imaginative, amazing that it all started with Jimmy Olsen, which is going to be in DC Finest starting next year. And I think that's really all that she wrote. Tiger Eyes here, my very good friend and colleague, running the Tiger Eyes polls for Near Mint Condition. So sad to hear about Priest, his Quantum and Woody, Black Panther, Deathstroke among my faves. Sorry to hear he's gone off the deep end. And here's the thing, just because I think he's gone off the deep end doesn't mean he necessarily have, but I do love his Deathstroke, and I do deeply appreciate his Black Panther. He's always been on the edge of coherence in the way he structures his stories, but that's just the way he structures stories. But I've never felt like, and he's always been controversial. He has very controversial ideas about women, about relationships, about marriage, about culture, about blackness in America, which is fine. I like a controversial article or author, or an article about a controversial author. It just feels like in the past couple of years he's really gone off the deep end, and he's just like preaching in a way that I think it's weird that people like bring all this hate for like Rippaverse or whatever, and they don't bring that same energy to how crazy Christopher Priest has gone. But it could just be me. Maybe it could just be me. Okay. Renzo really liked that part with Steph and Diana at the beginning of that Wonder Woman issue. And then it was just all of us talking about how bad and weird the X-Men comics have been. Well, folks, that is our show for the day. So here's the thing. I thought I was going to get to do a catch up this week, but there is so much else going on. So tomorrow is usually Jamming on Comics on Omnidog's channel with Omnidog and Freddie. But Freddie is an international sound man doing sound for all sorts of media productions, and he's going to be doing that tomorrow. So we are going to be doing that same bat channel, same bat time, different bat day. We're doing it on Wednesday this week instead of Tuesday. So that for me will be Thursday, but you don't need to do New Zealand math. Then supposedly we might finally be doing Marvel Solicits on Near Mint on Thursday in the afternoon. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to that because I usually plan that weeks ahead, and it kind of happened as a surprise because the solicits came sort of late. So you should still tune in. It's going to be Thursday, probably at 2:30 in the afternoon. I don't know if I'm going to be on that or not. Whether or not I'm on that, I might just do a haul around the world right after that because I want to put all these books on the shelves. So I don't think I'm going to have a chance to do another catch up. I think we're just going to roll on to July 23rd next week. We're holding it 3 weeks behind, but I do think there's a chance that I do a haul around the world. So if you haven't already turned on notifications, turn them on. Thank you for showing up. As many, I mean, we almost got to the normal viewer number that we normally get to, and this is totally not the normal day. So I really appreciate you making time in your world for me, and especially when I declaimed up front and in the middle and all the way to the end that I just truly hated this week of comics. I do not want you to think I'm always this negative. The regulars can tell you I usually love a lot more books than this. I don't think I was in a weird mood. I think it was just a lot of tropes that I don't really vibe with. I'm very excited to move on from this next week. So I hope I see you on Omnidog's Vault on Wednesday. I hope if I am there, I see you in Near Mint Condition on Thursday. I hope if I sneak in a haul around the world, which would be on Thursday or Friday, that I see you here, although you could always catch it on the replay. So it probably is the fact that you're going to have a lot of crises this week. But if we learned anything from that whole moment of crisis at the beginning about resolve, repair, recover, and sunk cost fallacy, what I really want you to do is if you find yourself steering into a crisis, you've just got to steer out of it, because I don't want you to have a crisis unless, of course, it's this one.